Hello, welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And we're back after a little bit of summer hiatus, and we're going to talk about
Just
some
gonna take
news
it
that
easy,
happened in the
guys.
past month or so. Before we do that, buddy, why don't you let the folks know what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we like to talk about games. And today is going to be a very inside baseball episode just cuz it feels like there's a lot of news in the industry and man, I don't know. I don't know what right we have to comment on it, but I want to comment on it, god damn it.
Hey,
A couple of big
we're,
things.
we're, we're two dudes with a podcast, right? Like,
Yeah, we're two dudes with a podcast. What don't we have the right to comment on? Okay. A couple of big things have come out that all intersect with sort of our world. The big one that is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds in the industry right now are Xbox layoffs. Xbox announced that they're going to be laying off 3,200 people in 2 waves of 16, and then they also divested themselves out of 5 studios. So 5 big studios kind of got jettisoned back into some level of kind of their own, sort of their own ownership. The new head of Xbox, whose name I don't remember, Asha something,
Asha. Yeah.
sort of promised a new era that included a bunch of interesting news. Like Bethesda, Todd Howard broke his blacklist on Jason Schreier, which had been standing for 15 years to sort of talk about kind of the next steps. It's all very PR-y. It really reeks of, boy, we have to distract them from the news of these 3,200 layoffs with, you know, kind of sort of barely announcing new projects, but yeah, it kind of does
Oh, see,
feel,
that's
like
interesting. I
what
have a
it is.
much different read than you do on that. I don't
Oh,
think it's
really?
distraction. Like, my view is kind of the like, you know, you know, Asha pointed a gun at Todd's head and says, "You have to fucking do something, and if you announce another fucking Skyrim re-release, I will kill you." Right? So, like,
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's true. I just think that are there's a couple of these that don't feel like
hmm.
real. We'll get into some of those details. In other news, we'll talk a little bit about Bungie because Bungie stuff is still sort of
Bungie
happening.
also laid off like
So
half the company, or Sony
they
laid off
also,
half of
yeah,
Bungie. Yeah,
it's the big thing is they laid off, I think, more than half. It's, Bungie is like a 1,500 person company. They lost 800 people, so now they're below 1,000, which does seem a little bit insane. There's some news that came out about sort of the profitability of Destiny 2 and sort of its release cycle. The next little piece is Magic. So in MagicCon, they announced their lineup for 2027, which includes 6 total sets, 3 Universes Beyond sets, 3 traditional Magic sets of varying quality, and we'll talk a little bit about what those look like. And then there was a fourth thing that I can't remember what I mentioned in my little write up. It might have just been talking about indies because we're also just going to talk about the fact that, yeah, indie stuff.
yeah.
Just like I work in the industry. There's a bunch of interesting stuff kind of like on the indie side of things. But anyway, let's start with the Xbox stuff because it's kind of the biggest and most pressing. So the summary is, new head of Xbox comes in, displaces long-term head of the brand whose name is famous, but I can't
Phil
remember.
Spencer.
Um, Phil Spencer, right? I was thinking Major Nelson, but not Major Nelson. Like Major Nelson was like the head for a while, but I'm thinking Phil Spencer. Um, Phil Spencer, for most of the 2010s and early 2020s, had a kind of bullish view of, shall we say, sort of the future of video games, was really pushing Game Pass. They acquired a ton of studios. They put all of those studios' games onto Game Pass to various degrees of sort of success. And eventually, we are now in 2026. The big hype of investment into the video game world that happened around that bubble has essentially burst completely. And in the wake of this huge spending spree, Asha is now in a position to have to pay down all of those kinds of debts, and she is doing so with some extremely harsh cuts. I think. Where do you think Xbox's sort of strategy as a product like went wrong? Like, what's your high level on Xbox for the last 10 years?
Uh, I this is going to be an extension of the thing I said about Asher pointing a gun at Todd Howard's head. I don't think Phil Spencer pushed all these companies to actually produce, right? I think he did the thing
Mm.
that everybody said that they wanted, which is like, go ahead, take your time, you know, explore your vision. And frankly, I I think that doesn't work, right? Like if you
Yeah.
let any software engineer have as much time as they want to perfect something, they will rewrite and rewrite the same block of code to like, absurd standards. Um, just because, because there's always a slightly better way to do it, or like there's always a new library, right? That kind of thing. And that is, I think that there wasn't enough push to produce from the top. I think Phil Spencer was a little too accommodating. I think part of this too is like the other part of this is that his protege, who was widely being looked like thought to have take over a spot when he retired, she left with Phil Spencer. And Asha obviously gets put in on top of it. I think part of it too is just kind of like industry shift. Like I think the thing I said was a problem. I also think that Microsoft want like because AI is an important thing in the industry, they want to move resources into that. And the nonprofit generating games division is a place to make cuts. So I think they're a victim there. I think that's more luck than anything else. Like I think there was a world where maybe Xbox, like where the outcome of this kind of change leadership was Xbox being spun off into a separate entity. Obviously, didn't happen, but I think there's a world where that could have happened. But I think I really think the big thing is just kind of like um, companies too happy to sit on their laurels and kind of work on aspirational projects never actually deliver. And when they did, they weren't blockbusters. We were talking a little bit about this in the pre-show, but um like Avowed and Outer Wilds were good, but they weren't breakout hits. Starfield, same thing, right? Like Starfield, which was supposed to be Todd Howard's magnum opus.
Yeah.
If you read the memes, right? Like, kind of came out like a wet fart, and I think some of that is like lack of pressure from higher ups.
There's so much in there that I want to get to the bottom of. I
Go
feel like
for
I
it.
have to. I was talking a little bit about it in the pre-show. Like I have to give Starfield another real college try. I put some time into Starfield. I put some real time into Starfield. I got it on launch. Where did I must have gotten it on Steam, right? Because I don't think I was playing it on.
I was playing a Game
Uh,
Pass when it came out, but I never really played it. I played it for like a handful of hours and kind of fell off it pretty quick.
maybe I was playing it on Game Pass, and see part of this I think is that uh part of this I think is that they made a big play for PC and they couldn't dislodge Steam. They couldn't beat Steam. Anyway, Star is this where I played you? God damn it. God, my like I this thing is like trying to update while I just need to search for one fucking location. Okay, show me one game, please. Um and it doesn't even show me my fucking playtime. I'm gonna shoot myself. Okay, whatever. Uh, yeah, I guess that came out. Wow, 2023. That is a wild. That's wild that it came out that long ago. It's also sort of wild that I still have it downloaded. I guess it goes to show you how much I care about sort of my space. Anyway, the interesting thing to me about all of this is the relationship with the hardware. That's the place where I think Xbox kind of went wrong. I think the story of Xbox really starts with the end of the Xbox 360 era, which was the
Mhm.
generation that they really definitively, the last time Xbox was on top was the Xbox 360 era. PlayStation 3 was $100 more expensive. It felt impossible to get. And the exclusives were just much, much worse, right? People forget, but the Xbox had the original Mass Effect as an exclusive, right? And it was the easiest way to play a ton of these games that came out in that era that were like meant console, beauties, right? Fallout New Vegas, the original Skyrim. I played that on my Xbox during college. I didn't even play it on my PC at the time because I had this shitty laptop that wasn't powerful enough to play all of that kind of stuff. But when they transitioned out of the Xbox 360 into I think it's the Xbox One
Yeah.
next. They really lose their way, right? Like there's that whole presentation comes with the Connect loaded in. People hated that. It's always online. People hated that, right? Just all of these things that were announced kind of in the 2014 sort of era, and their pivot from that seemed to be towards day of PC Xbox exclusivity. So if you want to play the thing the day of, you can play it on your PC, which completely gutted their own exclusivity, right? Like you just have no reason to have an Xbox anymore because they were trying to make a play for, the PC storefronts, right? We're trying to make a play for Steam, just like everybody does and like everybody fails at, right? Um and then eventually kind of they get far enough where now the Xbox is more expensive than the PS4 and PS5s are. And so they're making the exact same mistake that they were to beat Sony on, which was to come out a year earlier with the cheaper hardware. That's what, you know, the Xbox One, or I'm sorry, the Xbox 360 won on. And somehow Sony was able to sort of build out this infrastructure of studios that were pumping hits, right? Like Insomniac with Spider-Man, the Spider-Man 1 and 2, you have Sony Santa Monica with God of War 1 and 2. Both of those are pumping multiple titles when Bethesda Game Studios fails to ship anything for 7 years between Fallout 4 and sort of Starfield. And so I think that's the part where sort of your piece and my piece align, right? There wasn't the pressure from the top. Everything was a little too accommodating, right? Sony was able to really exercise some discipline on their conglomerate studios in order to get them to push for strong exclusives on the platform that kept the PlayStation 4 and 5, right? Like in people's houses, right? Um and Xbox just couldn't deliver on sort of that front. And at this point I think they pivoted to Game Pass, which is now the sort of study of ire. And there's a bunch of complicated stuff happening sort of with Game Pass of it all. How have you been hearing about people talk about Game Pass when it comes to all of this stuff?
I honestly, I have not heard a ton about it. Like I have not heard a lot either way. I know people got mad when they raised the price, but
Mm,
like that's kind of the last thing I heard about it from that perspective. I know, like I think I have a Game Pass subscription, even though I don't use it enough to justify it. But I like kind of have like I have disposable income to do that. I did change from the Ultimate Game Pass to the PC Pass because I don't boot up any of my consoles. Like to your point, I boot up my PS5 when there's a PS5 exclusive I want to play, and I don't boot up my consoles really ever otherwise. I sometimes boot up my Switch for the same reason. But to your point, like I think the last time I booted up I have the Series M, I think it's called, the kind of like smaller, cheaper one. I booted that
yeah.
up. The last time I booted that up was to play it takes two whatever the kind of the romance cooperative game for couples that I played with my wife for a little while, than fiance.
So
Um
I want to read you this thing. This is a Jason Schreier quote, which came out, I guess, yesterday. Uh, he says, there are a lot of people out there in studio leadership within Xbox who absolutely detest Game Pass and think it has destroyed the value of their games. They think it's taken away from the value of all games in general, just as a service, and just has contributed a lot of just it's been a detriment to the games industry and those people's views because of how it devalues games. Verbatim, I guess. He speculates that Game Pass will move away from day one in the future. I think they'll keep it going, but at some points they're just going to remove day one sales because that makes no sense anymore. This is the sentiment that I have been seeing passing around, and this is kind of where indie games get brought into it because I've been seeing a lot of kind of, I don't want to say colleagues, but other folks who are sort of doing my sort of indie game publishers, right? People who are bringing indie games to sort of stuff. And I want to say, for the record, I have one Game Pass deal on day one for a game that is coming out. It's called Echo Weaver. And this is not me sort of glazing Microsoft, but I will just sort of say that that deal is a great deal, and it is the only reason that any of that this game is kind of happening at all. And this is so true for so many people I know. There are actually multiple publishers and studios who are only around because they were able to get Game Pass deals that frankly were ludicrous. They were they just not even that they didn't make financial sense. because I do think that they made a certain amount of financial sense, but not in a like tabulate your checkbook kind of financial sense, right? If you think that Xbox is running around with a bank account for Game Pass deals, and they are only signing games that are going to bring in customers, and those customers are going to outweigh the value. That's just not the way that they were thinking about Game Pass, right? Game Pass was a profit. It was a losing proposition. It was a losing proposition for years and years before I ever even got my first Game Pass deal. It was a losing proposition, right? Where Game Pass is handing out millions of dollars to sort of these indie titles. But the thing that they're looking for is volume, right? Like the theory of the case was not that each one of these games is going to bring a lot of money to Game Pass. The theory of the case for Game Pass was we need a robust service. We need to create a world where we're bringing new things to Game Pass on a regular enough cadence that there is always there's essentially a habit, right? Where someone is going to be looking at what's new on Game Pass, looking at what's new on Game Pass, looking at what's new on Game Pass. And the more that they do that, the more they're going to be able to sort of drive the PC business kind of away from Steam, from sort of these other sort of places to localize it all happening in the sphere. That was sort of the theory of the case. I don't think that that ended up being true. I think we were at the point where everyone just kind of goes, you know what, we've been doing this for half a decade at this point. I mean, I guess longer, maybe 7 years Game Pass has been around. And it just hasn't, it just hasn't paid off. But absolutely, the people who got screwed in this arrangement were Microsoft. It was not the third party studios who were getting big Game Pass deals and then bringing in just a fraction of the players that they otherwise would have needed to in another sort of scenario. I also would probably say, and this is maybe the harshest part of it at all, I think it's cope. There are so many games that they're just not good enough. I have shipped flops. I think a lot of people have shipped flops, but you are sort of in this world where like if you get a big giant Game Pass deal, you don't have to deal with the possibility of shipping a when the thing comes out and nobody plays it and it doesn't really do whatever, your expenses are all paid. You get your Game Pass money, right? And basically what Xbox was kind of doing was taking on the liability of hits and flops in order to get your game into, get your game sort of into Game Pass. And if there are indie people who have this same sort of view that Game Pass destroyed the value of their games, and the fact that it was on Game Pass on day one meant that nobody wanted to buy it because they could just get the Game Pass subscription instead or whatever. Like all of that is just kind of cope. I don't think that any of that is really real. These people were going to ship a flop probably, and that's kind of that.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe there's a world where if they didn't ship it on Game Pass, they would have made more. Like obviously, I don't know the numbers behind the scenes, but I find it hard to believe that they would have sold more enough copies on Steam or whatever to make up that difference. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I mostly agree with you. Um, I do think that Game Pass has its problems, like part of which is that like for whatever reason they don't always ship. Like there's not always like for instance, I have been playing through Control, uh, recently, and I was like, oh, that was a game on Game Pass, and so I went to Game Pass and like it was like there were a bunch of weird problems with it. I couldn't get the aspect ratio to work. I'm like, hey, it says it supports all of this, like the official website, and I looked it up, and the version on Game Pass is like some old shitty version that didn't get like all of the final updates, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I have to buy it on Steam. Turns out I had already bought it on Steam, so it's not an issue, right? Like that's big gamer problem. Like Steam library is larger than I remember it being, but
The 0451 game, right? Control.
sorry.
The immersive sim 0451. Am
Uh,
I thinking of the right thing?
you might be thinking. So I got it confused with Prey.
Ah, shit. Yes, I am thinking Prey. This is
Yeah,
different.
I don't know how I don't know how I made that confusion. I made the exact same error, and I don't know why I confused it
Yeah,
with Prey.
it's not even like Remedy is the same people.
It's the Alan Wake people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's essentially the SCP Foundation game.
Yeah.
Except it's called the Bureau of Control, and because SCP Foundation has copyleft protections. Um,
Is this because you want to do because I know the sequel's coming out,
yeah, they announced a sequel,
Resonant?
and
Okay.
basically it was a thing where it's like, oh, I always wanted to go back to play that, right? And and again, I realized I was thinking of Prey and not of not of Control, but I installed and played Control anyway because like I don't not to the tangent too hard, but I find Control the lore to be super interesting. I find the gameplay to like this is like one of the biggest ludo narrative dissonance games for me, where like the actual gameplay is just kind of like whatever, and I'm doing it mostly to like pick up the case files and read about the weird SCP shit. Um, uh, but otherwise, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think the gunplay is like super simple and whatnot.
Fair enough.
Um,
Well, Prey, that's an Arcane game. That is a Bethesda game. Arcane is one of the pieces that have sort of been spun
mm.
out. Um, uh, so
well,
I
so the arcane thing is that they are they have started negotiations with the French labor system to determine whether or not they are allowed to fire people, right? Like, that's but that's a whole other discussion.
That's like a political hobby horse. Yeah,
Yeah,
I do know what you mean. Yeah, it's funny to me, especially because like Arcane, Arcane really splashed onto the scene with
Dishonored.
Dishonored, Dishonored 2. And they kind of ended up sort of in obscurity. Partially because I think Prey is a good example of this. Prey is sort of the single player, deep narrative, kind of immersive sim type that really played in 2010 and just don't play in 2020. That game came out in 2017.
Which game? Sorry,
Plus, I also weirdly think Prey. Prey
Prey.
came out in
Okay,
2017.
so did Game
Plus,
Pass.
I
I
also
looked
think
it up. Game Pass was
yeah,
20.
true.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, you were gonna say.
That is earlier than I thought. I always thought of Game Pass as a 2020s thing, but I guess it's almost 10 years of Game Pass.
Yeah,
God, weird to think about, weird to say. But I do think that there's also something interesting here, which is just like the development cycles of games. So one of the things that Jason Schreier talked about in a YouTube video was about he talked to Todd Howard for the first time in 15 years. He got blacklisted for leaking Fallout 4, which was a huge story at the time. He was at Kotaku. There were a series of script pages that Kotaku published with that, and the script pages being published is what Bethesda sort of said. We can debate, the journalistic whatever, on whether or not that is fair or bullshit later. But one of the things that I think is sort of interesting is we talked about how Skyrim was 100-person development team, and Elder Scrolls 6 and now Fallout 5, which they have announced that they are working on, are 1,000-people teams. And there's this other thing that is happening, which is games just cost so much fucking money to make. And that part I think is insane and kind of crazy. Um, I don't really know. I like want to comment on this, but this is such the other side of the industry. Like I don't really know what happened. Like why did we get into a position where where these things are so expensive? But it also touches in the Destiny, right? One of the things that Paul Tassi came out with after the Bungie layoffs is that Destiny 2 was largely an unprofitable venture. It was unprofitable for Activision and it was basically unprofitable for Bungie, but there were these brief glimpses of profitability, and that's what sort of drove everything for. Um I just kind of think, I don't know. I don't know what I think about this one. It is really weird. It is really wild to me that Skyrim was shipped with 100 people and, Starfield is 1,000, and Starfield is so much worse than Skyrim was.
yeah. I wonder how much of that, like, I would love to see how much of that is like but I'm wasted is a little too strong of a term, but it's the term I'm going to use. Like wasted man hours in that like stuff that ultimately gets worked on and doesn't make it into the end game in any reasonable sense, and is outside of any sort of like like there's room definitely for like, oh, I worked on something and it just didn't make the final cut, but like it feels like there has to have been like so much more of that, right? Like that there was just like a bunch of churn. Maybe it's just kind of the reality, like because it's Starfield's the old engine, right? It's not like they have people churning um, on like building a new engine. It's not like there's the kind of like you can have people working on asset generation, but it's that shouldn't affect the core systems. Um,
Yeah, there's a part of me that thinks like as games have been pushed for more and more photorealism, maybe it makes the difference. So for instance, Starfield looks a lot better than Skyrim does. The animations are better, smoother. You have a lot more VO. Things that they kind of talked about with Starfield was kind of the nature of wanting to get away from I took an arrow to the knee. Like that was because they were limited at the time and you heard that voice line all over because it was just one of the random things the guards say. And when the guards have 20 things to say and you walk into town 250 times, you're going to hear the same line fucking a lot. I think is really what it kind of comes down to. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for this one. I kind of wish I did. Part of me thinks that I mean, I feel like I am currently taking advantage of this because I work entirely on the opposite end of the spectrum where I have a dev team of 3 people and we can make a profit on games all the time, with dev teams sort of that are that small. But I really wonder what happened where we just kind of can't make this, this size of game anymore.
I
Or
wonder.
if like
I wonder if some of it's
go for it.
professionalization, right? Like
Yeah.
we've talked about, like Blizzard was the best in the bad old days, right? Like I I
Mhm.
some of it might just be the industry getting older, right? Like, you know, there are like every one of these studios had stories about people like sleeping under their desks, which is not great,
Yes.
but is also a thing you can reasonably do when you're a 20 something, right?
Yeah.
All these people who were 20 somethings are now like 30 to 40 to 50 somethings, right? And are probably clocking out at 5 o'clock, especially because they know at the end of the day, fucking Satya Nadella is signing their paycheck rather than, Todd Howard, right? Like, or whoever the Zenimax group or whatever, which is like a lot closer to earth. And if they, if Bethesda misses, Microsoft isn't going to go under, right? Like if Starfield flops, Microsoft isn't going to go under. Bethesda might have, or at least might have been set back seriously enough that it was an issue and they knew that they had to perform on the next one. I wonder if that's like, I hate that this is true, but like this is akin to the kind of the like, if you don't have the pressure of, the company collapsing beneath you, maybe you need someone above you, artificially inducing that pressure. And everybody hates that, but like I think some of that is necessary to like get things done sometimes.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly true. One thing I will say is, even at my scale, right, which again is a handful of people rather than thousands of people, I've never had a game ship on time. It's actually a meme inside of the company. I've shipped maybe 25 titles or something so far with Aquapara. Um, we talk about it constantly about how devs always want to push. It is almost never from us. There are some times where I will push release dates. I'm the one who gets to set release at the company. I do a bunch of work to sort of scout them out and on all of this other kind of stuff. So there are times where I will, pinpoint a date that I like for this reason or that reason kind of thing. But whenever we sign a project, we know when it's supposed to ship. I put a day on the calendar and we never hit that date. We always push. Um, and I don't know. I think a certain amount of that is a software development thing, right?
Yeah,
We
I've got context on this from like the non-video game side of this, right? Which is,
Yeah, sure. You go for it.
yeah, early in my career, I had someone tell me that when you're estimating the length of a task or a project, 'cause this is a thing that the PMs ask you to do, right? They ask you to like scope the things you're working
Yeah.
on. They said, make your best estimate and then multiply it by 3. And give that answer. Um, and part of like, and if you hit your timeline, you're a hero because you finished early. But most of the time that's you're not going to, and that's because of unanticipated delays, like like things that are harder than you thought. Like you kind of imagine like a best case, like what a reasonable case
Uh,
scenarios, and never hits that, right? Like there are things you're not anticipating. There are emergencies elsewhere that eat your time, that if you actually measured the amount of time you're working on the project, you'd probably be closer to your estimate. But the PM doesn't see that over the past 3 weeks you have done like your core responsibilities for only 66% of the time, because the other 33% of the time you're working out, like you're putting out fire, like there's a on-call emergency, or there's a bug somewhere that needs to be fixed relatively quickly, that kind of thing. And I find that strategy actually works pretty well. Um,
Mm.
the inverse problem with this is, of course, is your task will expand to fill available time, right? If you don't give a developer an end date, they will work forever on it. Like I mentioned this before, but it's like, um, I'm sure that the reason that the devs want to push is because there is a feature that they're close to getting done, and like, oh, it's 2/3 done. It would be such a weight to cut this. But the answer is cut that and fucking ship the game, right? Or ship the software in my
It's so
world.
funny. I have also generated the most insane sort of, I have generated the most insane second site for this kind of thing. A couple of months ago, I was in a call with a number of my kind of colleagues, and we were talking about whether or not a game was going to push. And I said, I think that the game is still going to push. I'm pretty sure the developer is going to come back and ask us for more time. And everybody in that call said, we've already pushed a bunch. They are going to feel, because one of the things that we do as a publisher, we say we enter a contract that says, I am going to pay you based on these milestones, right? X amount of money for delivering Y product, right? When something pushes, we do not generate more money to give them. We say, okay, your milestone that was due on in May is now due in June. And so what you've essentially done there is you have taken the same amount of money and spread it over 2 months instead of one, essentially, right? Though obviously it's not monthly, it tends to be like
Sure.
quarterly. Whatever. Milestone schedules are complicated, but that's the way that it works. So like when we push a game, it's kind of no skin off my back in a certain sense because like rarely do I go to a developer and say, "Oh, you want to push the game? Yeah, that means that I am going to shell out an extra." No, they understand that they're not getting that much. They're not getting any more cash for this, and we understand that we're not going to, sort of pay out that cash sort of infinitely. But we were having this conversation, and they were talking about how the developers are really pressed for cash, so they need the game to ship so that they can start making money on it, right? The future of their sort of studio. And I just said, I was like, I understand that. I've heard that a lot. I am sure these developers are going to push again. And maybe 2 months later, they came back and they said, "Oh, actually, can we push another month?" And it was just like, you are the ones who are telling us that your company was going to go out of business if we didn't ship the game by X date. And now all of a sudden, well, X date doesn't really look. Want to go? It's just like, okay, that always happens. The worst part of this is at a certain point you have to hold the line with it. I've also never had a developer who wants to announce their release date live because I tell them once your release live, you are set, right? Like you can't go back on that. You go to press and you say, "Hey, the game is coming out on date and time." That's it. You did it. You are going to be held to that sort of standard, and it will take an act of God to sort of change things around. Everybody gets really nervous about this. Normally I just kind of force them to push through or whatever. But I have, and you have seen, we announced a release date and then we actually had to push it a couple of months. I have guessed wrong on sort of that position. And there are actually times when right that, actually we can't really, it's not going to be launch kind of thing. And I have to eat that crow and then go, oh, oops, it's not going to be, whatever. It's going to be this other sort of. And if that's happening on a team with, a dozen people, boy, you better believe it is going to be running rampant like the fucking plague through Bethesda, right? Because not only is it, 1,000 people who are all working on different aspects of Starfield, but like those different aspects can like bounce into each other in really, really problematic ways. One of the things I get blocked on all the time, I would love to make, I could probably make every trailer at the beginning of a campaign from the game, but that stuff isn't implemented. Like I just don't have a build that is capable of capturing the footage that will make for a good trailer. So I have to wait for the devs to implement that build. And that means that every trailer kind of ends up getting blocked by, what can the devs promise me in a footage capable build, right? And questions like that are just all over the place. And so I can't imagine what it's like for whatever Starfield or something kind of on that scale where the needs of a build don't just come down to two people, it comes down to 200 who all have to sort of sign off and say yes and kind of get you through this bureaucratic rigmarole before you can, you know, you can make a trailer and set it live kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I that makes perfect sense to me. It also wouldn't surprise me if like this is like a compounding thing. It's like imagine that every dev, for example, okay, every dev working on a project needs, 2 days of push over the course of their project, right? Like at 100 devs, that's 200 extra days. At 1,000 devs, that's 2,000 extra days, right? Like, uh, uh, and I think that's the kind of thing that like doesn't have like also part. I think I wonder how much this is also driven by kind of like broader software stuff, right? Like in my day job, um, you know, if I miss uh, a promised deadline or an estimate for a task I'm working on, that maybe is an issue for me on my performance evaluation. Although it tends not to be either, which is its own ball of wax. Um, but it's not generally an issue for the customer or downstream, right? Like if I'm working on a new feature, 90% of the time the customer either doesn't know about it or doesn't have a hard end date, right? It's like, oh, we are working on this, it will come out, or it's like, they find out when we publish a patch, it's like, hey, you can do this now, right? Um, and at that point, like, it's not like missing a deadline, right? It's not like pushing a release because like there just aren't as many announced features in kind of like the in the normal software world, like you know I'm sure there are enthusiasts, but there's not a ton of people who are like champing at the bit for like the Microsoft Excel patch notes. um and like I wonder, because most software engineers don't work in games, right? And my guess is that most software engineers that work in games work outside of games for some period of their career for a variety of reasons. I wonder if like that kind of expectation has seeped over the line into the gaming industry. um and that lack of kind of urgency, uh because like the only time you get industry urgency on the other side is like when it's like if a company is running out of runway and they're gonna excuse me, basically cease to exist. But
Yeah.
um when that happens, it's rarely because you didn't ship a feature on time. It's maybe the culmination of some of these things, but it's not like you launch features as like these like the launching a game is fundamentally different from launching other software because you're generally not launching in the same kind of units. You're not doing one big release for things. You're generally doing like small releases for pieces of things. And if that's the model people are used to working on, um, then I think that like I think that it's got deleterious. That would have a deleterious effect on the game industry. The closest thing you would get to that is live service games, and that's got its own set of problems, as we'll probably get into at some point. Uh, here,
Yeah, it's also like a hit, it's like hits and flops, right? Like
yeah.
you are putting all this work into the game before you know whether or not it's going to perform, right? This is one of the reasons why I think live service games are so powerful and have taken up so much sort of like industry share is a World of Warcraft subscriber base, okay? You have a much more manageable, just like on the revenue level, like a much more manageable time making projections for whether or not this thing is going to be a success compared to Starfield or something like that, right? With Starfield, you have to hit it big. You have to hit the home run, right? Where this thing is amazing. It's so good. It's going to get downloaded by 20 million players like Skyrim did or something like that. And part of what happens is you end up benchmarking back and back. You benchmark, you say, well, Fallout 4 made a blah, 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 well, Skyrim made a blah, 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 right? And those ones showed a certain amount of growth. Those ones showed a certain amount of this or that. But the reality is that Fallout 4 better hook, it has better drive, people are going to visit that Fate more. It's part of a big IP. You're not launching a new IP like Starfield. Your IP is not weird and confusing like Starfield. You know what I mean? Like all of those kinds of things really play a sort of detriment. I actually think the same thing happened for Dishonored and sort of Prey. Dishonored just had such a hook. It looked so good. It looked so clean. Just the little things like that guy's mask, Corvo's mask, the sort of Victorian steampunkness of it all just had a real solid look, a visual appeal that made that thing sort of sell. Prey, you're up against these big smoke monsters. Those things sort of suck and are uninteresting, and I don't know. It doesn't grab you
I
in
think
sort of
Prey
the same
was
sort of way.
I think Prey was relatively successful though. Like,
I'm sure it was. To be fair, right? But
yeah,
I just think that in terms of which one of these is going to be remembered by history, like which one of these is going to be Psycho, and which one of these is going to be some forgotten, 60s horror film that nobody remembers, right? People are probably going to remember Dishonored more than remember Prey, I would expect.
yeah, that's probably fair. I also think that like part of that too, part of the thing you're pointing at here is that Dishonored was a relatively compact game, right? And people
Mm,
and there's like part of the part of I think the issue is that because people expect a certain amount of game for their money, that like all these like this is again a scaling problem, right? Like to make a 60-hour game with 1,000-person team is going to take much longer than to make a 20-hour game with a 1,000-person team. And it
yeah,
kind of feels like it should, right? It's like, oh, well, if you got 1,000 people, you should be able to come up with a 60-hour game, right? Like, um, I think part of the problem there is that it is hard to get to 60 hours of, I'm going to call like scripted content, right? Like, like part of the reason why Skyrim is so immersive is because it's kind of like, it's a more emergent game. Like they put a bunch of stuff in place and they kind of like let you go, right? Like,
yeah,
um, same thing with like Cyberpunk. Whereas something like a oh what like I played Mina the Hollower. I beat Mina the Hollower. That was like a 20-hour game for me, right? And every single part of that is a bespoke design screen, right? Um, uh, and that like I don't think you could make a 60-hour game easily, at least out of that, right? Like this is like the games that kind of hit those lengths, that are in kind of this more like traditional mold tend to have a lot like, this is like Ubisoft games, right? Ubitower games, right? Where a lot of the stuff that you're doing is kind of bullshit, right? Like it's oh, I could spend 80 hours collecting every point of interest, but like, 60% of them are kind of generic. Um versus and are like, if not literally procedurally, like practically procedurally generatable versus uh like a more compact, uh well tuned set of scenarios. um I think it's a scale. I don't know. I think a lot of this is scaling problems. Uh,
yeah. I think that's definitely true. I also think that at a certain point, the industry kind of found its ceiling, right? There's this other piece of this which I haven't seen really about, but I'm just going to call this the Roblox effect. At the same time all of this shit was happening, Roblox is hollowing out the next generation of gamers, right? People aren't onboarded onto the PlayStation and the Xbox in the way that we were when we were kids and teenagers. People are onboarded to Roblox, really, mainly, right? And so the Xbox machine is sort of tracking gamers in our generation, kind of these millennial gamers who are moving up through time and trying to keep them engaged by showing us titles like Starfield that are, engaging and fun and interesting in the way that we expect titles like Starfield to be, engaging and fun and whatever. But if I am a child who was born in 2006, you know, Skyrim came out when I was 5. I didn't play it. I got onboarded to Minecraft and later Roblox. And Roblox is such a massive and sort of strong ecosystem that it has held me all the way until I'm about 18 years old, right? And I think this is really the big thing. This to me is where it all kind of comes crashing down. For about 20 years or so, right? We kind of had, basically from the first NES up through kind of the sort of the end of maybe the Xbox 360 era, we had a really solid sort of core where like even I know young people, right? Xavier who works in my company is somebody sort of like this. They get onboarded into consoles in the same way that you and I got on consoles, right? But by the time the 2010s roll around, that's just not happening. It's not a world that these kids are sort of living in, and no longer do they have a lot of access to sort of this side of things. The only place they do have that access is Nintendo. And part of that is because Nintendo sort of sees what's going on with mobile phones and tablets and builds the Nintendo Switch as a console that is radically different than PS4 and Xbox sort of pursue. And so they're able to kind of hold on to kids audience kind of that way. But at this point, I think Nintendo's doing something different. Like, Xbox, I don't really think is actually competing with Nintendo very much anymore. Nintendo, I sort of think is weirdly kind of competing more with like mobile games, if I'm kind of honest, with like how some of that stuff is like working. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's they're competing. I don't know. I think they're doing this weird straddle thing, right? Like they
yeah,
might
it's
actually
exactly what I
be.
was gonna say. They're really straddling, right?
Yeah, I would say the Switch might be the entry point for like younger gamers to get into like normal console stuff because right, like you can get
Yeah.
like last generation essentially AAA hits on the Switch too, right? Uh, but I think you're right that like like the portabilities, like the Switch Lite was like the one that you couldn't play separate for you couldn't play docked, right? Like it was
Yep.
just the mobile version. So I think you've got a pretty good point there. Uh,
Yeah. Also, part of this is I understand how powerful the Nintendo Switch was, which machine. And so it dumbed down. I mean, that's putting it constrained the amount that you could do. You couldn't have Starfield on the Switch
yeah,
because you can't do those big expansive kind of experiences. I mean, you could do Breath of the Wild and whatever the second one was called. But
Tears of the
like that
Kingdom.
is Nintendo's premier team doing premier team work for the console hardware that they themselves sort of design. It's all going perfectly for there. But like, boy, many titles of mine have really struggled onto the Switch, and I think that's the part where they're kind of crossing over mobile audience are playing games. I mean, obviously it's different, free to play, all that other kind of stuff. But these lower to the ground, sort of not trying to do the big, expansive, crazy, cool stuff that you get out of Bethesda or Halo. Halo's another one that's kind of happening. Big Xbox, where Halo Infinite is kind of DOA. Nobody understands what's happening with. Do you think that Halo as an IP is dead and buried? Like, what's your
Oh,
take there?
it's not dead and buried. Like they will like it is too iconic for it to be dead and buried. But I think it is, you know, example number one of like people who needed their asses kicked to get something done type of deal, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's gonna happen. Like I think it is too valuable of an IP to let that lapse. Like I think a Halo game will come out. Like like they're doing another Combat Evolved remake remaster of some sort, right? Like I think it's just the campaign, and that's probably the starting point. But they have to, like, they will do something with it. I just don't know exactly what it will be.
my feeling on Halo is this thing. Well, maybe not this thing. My feeling on Halo really just is Halo needs a God of War 2018. Was it when was the
Yeah,
first one?
the
2016.
reboot, it needs to reboot like that.
2018. Yeah, it needs a reboot like that. I think the same thing happened in a weird way to kind of God of War, that franchise, right? Which was a big franchise. I remember I never played them. Did you play God of War
I did
one, two,
not play the
three?
classic God of Wars. No,
Yeah, I didn't play the classic God of Wars either. Obviously, they were made fun horrendously at the time as these kind of like quick time event cutscene machines or whatever. And I was not very interested in sort of that experience. Um, but I really do kind of wonder, maybe there is a world where Halo kind of comes to the fore, but they have to do a really radical kind of re-explanation of what the game is and where it sort of is. It kind of
I
can't keep doing the same thing that it's been doing sort of before. And maybe I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways you could do this. I think you could do it on the play level. I think you could narrative level, but yeah,
see. I think Halo Infinite was supposed to be that, and you can't have it not be hit. Like the problem is that like God of War's identity was not so tightly tied to its mechanical identity. Halo is.
that's true.
Right? Like
Yeah,
if you make Halo feel like Call of Duty, like people have been furious for years they put sprint into Halo ODST or whatever they did, right? Like they're still mad about it, right? There's gonna be sprint in the in the new remaster and people are mad about it, right? Like um I think if you depart any further from that, then it's just like you're going to alienate the people who care, right? Like God of War worked because it was kind of like a hack and slashy type game at its core, and the evolution of that with God of War 2018 wasn't so far of a departure that was a problem. And also at the end of the day, it was more about the characters, and there was like a whole tone shift, right? Like this, like the only way you can do this with Halo is if like you decided that like Halo Wars was like the new direction for the series, and I just don't think you can do that, right? Like,
Yeah,
uh,
that's actually part of what I'm pitching, actually. Like, I think that you could kind of do a combined arms, sort of battlefieldy Halo very, very effectively, right? You bring back the Scorpion and all of those kinds of things, and you make the battlefields much bigger, many more people on them, right? Halo Infinite was a very constrained kind of,
mm,
scale of, I mean, it was like 6v6 or something like that. You could do the 80v80 or whatever the battlefield sort of scale battles are, and really integrate, those vehicles. Your vehicles are very iconic in Halo. Everybody, Banshee, the Ghost controls is like the basis for Airframe Ultra, right? Like the germ of an idea for Airframe Ultra was, what if I made a hoverbike game and I used ghost controls from Halo 2 in order to like control sort of the hoverbike, and everything that is Airframe Ultra now, you know, kind of came forth from sort of that. I feel like would pitch if I was, I don't know who the fuck. Part of it is I don't like 343. I played Halo 4 5 and I was liking them at the time, but I now think of them as empty. Like I couldn't tell you a single thing about either of those games, even in the way that I could describe details of other games that are like similarly like not remember very well. I remember lots of plot points about Mass Effect Andromeda, right? Which granted I like more than most people, and I'm big into Mass Effect or whatever. But like Mass Effect Andromeda and Halo 4 and 5 were doing the same kind of thing on a story level, I think, maybe. But like I could not tell you anything about what happened in Mass. I could tell you a lot about what happened in Halos 1, 2, and 3, right?
fair enough, fair enough. Um, we should probably push to a different topic. Uh,
Yeah, what do you we've spent, I guess, a kind of an hour, maybe 45 minutes on the Xbox side of things.
uh, do we want? Do we touched on the Bungie stuff? I think this is all a piece of the same pie, right? Like Sony
Yep.
Sony doesn't do AI, so it doesn't have like those other pressures. And it's willing to be patient with its single player games, which and it is like famously failed horrendously with all of its live service attempts. Which is like you mentioned live service being like this kind of different thing. I think the trap with live service is that like there can only be like so many of them, right? Like per genre. Like the what's the there's like somebody came up with a formulation that's like there's the big one, there's the first place one, the second place one, and the weird one. And those are the three successful live service games you can get in any niche, right? Like in like battle royales, that would be like, Fortnite, Apex, and PUBG's the weird one, maybe, or something like that, right? Or like in extraction shooters, it's like Arc Raiders, Tarkov, and Hunt Showdown is the weird one type of deal. Which is part of the issue with Marathon, which is Bungie's.
Ooh,
Yeah. I so
yeah, that's the problem to sort of work through.
yeah. I love Marathon. I think it's a fantastic game. Um.
Mm.
Uh. Not only did half the company get laid off, but Joe Ziegler left on Friday. I don't know if you saw this. Like last
Ooh.
Friday was his last day. The person who is I forget their name, but they the person who's becoming the game director was like a high placed person on some successful Destiny expansions. Like I think they were the lead designer on Forsaken, maybe. Um, and so the kind of reads from the marathon world, which is like a lot of despair, is like, oh, they're going to focus on PvE content for marathon, and we are going to lose our extraction shooter because they're going to try and do PvE stuff. And I don't know how real that is, but I'm afraid that it might be real. Um, that
Yeah, I mean, I remember I Ziegler is interesting because he's came from Valorant, right? Like he came,
yeah,
I remember we talked about this on the podcast because you were the one who told me about it all in the first place, I think, right? Like that he came with kind of these PvP bona fides to,
yeah,
to the extractor shooter things, and really kind of like veered it in direction. That is wild that he well,
yeah. He like he got the game out of development hell, which kudos to him for that, and he did a good job. Like
yep,
I think Marathon's a great game, but it's
yep.
not resonate. And like, the cope I have seen online is something like the tweet was something like it's the best shooter in years with a fantastic art style, but like gamers can't deal with losing. And so
That's that's real as fuck, to be
y-
honest with you.
yeah. No, their PV experimental mode launches on Tuesday. We'll see how that goes. Um but there's like a lot of thought that like, oh, like, and honest, like I will say, like, for a game set in the marathon universe, a more PvE focused mode that lets you push more story content, which is part of the draw of marathon, makes sense to me. It just saddens me that, like, maybe we're going to lose the extraction core of this game. Um, which I think works very well. I think it's got issues, but we will do a deeper dive on marathon at some point. But um uh like the bigger point here is that, you know, uh Sony brought on Bungie to like shepherd their live service games, and every single one of them failed, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's Bungie's fault, but like famously Conquered. Um there's like I think there's a handful of canceled live service games in this realm as well. Marathon obviously like has dedicated fan base, but isn't doing super duper well. And part of this is the thing I will agree with Paul Tassian. I think I said off the cast, but I think Paul Tass is a little bit too doomer at this point. But he said that like Sony has the patience for like Santa Monica Studios to spend like 6 years polishing whatever game they're working on and release it and have faith that it will make the money back. But they don't seem to have the patience to like, support marathon, like not marathon, they might, but like support these live service games through a couple of rough years till they find their footing. Unlike, say, a company that gets a lot of shit, Ubisoft, who, held through on For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege and just kind of like let them cook even though they didn't launch great. And now they are kind of like ongoing, stable, profitable properties.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I think that's actually a pretty good read of things. Part of it, I think, is because people are constantly looking. There's a lot of signal and noise problems that are happening, sort of here, and also I think part of it is just like the there there's this like heroic amount of cope that goes into working in video games. Um, which is really complicated to deal with. I deal with this all the time, to be honest with you, of like, when is someone let me explain this in two ways. Okay, so way number one, you need people to believe in the project. Something that's happened to me in like a professional setting is you will get people who don't believe in the project that they are currently working on, and that's a really detrimental thing to have on a team. I mean, part of it is scale, right? When I have a group of people who are working on a team and that number amounts to about 12 people, right? Having 1/12 of your team kind of in a doomer state is really brutal, right? But you need to get people who believe in the vision, who buy into that, who understand that the game is going to be a success, that it's going to find an audience, things, right? And when you filter for people, when people who can't get that buy-in kind of wash out, which they do quite a lot of the time, because it's either buy-in or ship out. A lot of the times how that works, you end up in the opposite end, which is where now the game is really having problems and everybody's kind of coping too hard about it, just like the game, in order to like work on the thing. And keeping between those two extremes is really tough. You either get into a position where people are making really extreme sort of kind of bad decisions because they don't understand the sort of the state of the game, shall we say, right? In like a game theory kind of sense. They're not thinking about what are my strategic moves in order to success. They're just thinking about the critical sort of side of things of this game is failing, and here's what's going wrong, right? Which is never going to get you to sort of the other end of the equation. And those people are running up against people blinders on, and they are just trusting. You know what? I can't think about any of this other stuff. I just have to finish the just have to put the work in, and we'll sort of like make that kind of thing happen. Um I don't know that there's a good answer I don't know that there's a good answer to like sort of solve that piece of the puzzle. I think maybe the best answer I've ever heard is from Jeff Kaplan, actually. In Jeff Kaplan's interview, he said this thing that has maybe been the most important thing that he said in that 5-hour Lex Fried podcast, where he talked about, when I was in leader, he basically said when I was in leadership, I really had two levers. I could either push the team or I could pull the team, and those are my only decisions: push them further or do I pull them back? And that's kind of where I feel like this sort of thing sort of ends up. You have a leadership who is either pushing when they ought to be pulling, which I actually think probably describes Sony to a certain extent with kind of with Bungie. If Microsoft is they are not pushing, they were to pull, right? Like Microsoft was just kind of letting people do whatever they want without any sort of independence or ownership or any of that kind of stuff. Um, Sony, I think, is doing kind of the exact opposite, and that's sort of like to their detriment. And really sort of speaks to what you're getting at. And the other piece of it is that like I don't know, Bungie also is just a kind of terrible business proposition. They were so bloated. They just kind of kept hiring. They kept hiring people. I've known a lot of people. A lot of my personal contacts have floated through Bungie. And I think part of that is just because they thought that they were going to be the next Blizzard and never kind of got there. I think really they just wish they could put, could you imagine if they just put Destiny on a subscription? They should. You never can make that work. Once you go free to play, it's never gonna make the next jump from there. But I think really that's maybe what the game needed in order to find a footing.
I also think that like the business side of things was just like super poor. Like the thing that I took away from the kind of reporting about like Bungie like never being or Destiny never being profitable is like they did the classic thing, the classic blunder where like they had a profitable expansion and uh I noticed you're drinking a Pepsi. You a traitor? Are you a traitor to
I am well.
Coca-Cola?
It's the so I first of all, fuck you. Okay, I'll drink what I want.
Yeah,
Second of all,
you can drink what you
I
want. It doesn't make you not a traitor. Traders can drink
I
Pepsi.
went to I went to the store to buy caffeine free soda so that
Uh,
at night instead of chugging caffeine at 2 in the morning right before I go to sleep, I have something else, and the only thing that they had was Diet Pepsi that was
okay.
caffeine free.
I would
So
say that's why I drink root beer at night because it's root beer and seltzer. But yeah, to get back to the point is like they had a successful expansion and then they invested in opening up a new office instead of like being like let's make sure the next expansion is also a hit, right? And then the expansion wasn't a
yep.
hit and they got in fucking hot water and they almost closed until fucking Pete Parsons or whatever his name is, who everybody wants to hate on with his classic car collection, did the heroic work of like, duping, Sony into saving all of their jobs for another 2 years, right?
Such
Like,
an insane thing. This will never stop being kind of the most insane. I don't know. Like I recognize that money was free. Everybody, I don't know, and everybody was constantly throwing cash around, all kinds of things. And also, the one of the things I think is really interesting is we have seen really direct evidence of this kind of thing, kind of pay off. This was the magical thing said to put this into perspective. Microsoft bought Minecraft for $2 billion. Okay, Sony bought Destiny for three, and you Microsoft buying Minecraft for $2 billion is maybe like the most sound acquisition they have ever made, like, I don't know, ever in the business history. I don't know, maybe there's just like some completely off the wall tech side, acquisition that Microsoft made that is way smarter than this. But just Minecraft was so good, is so good, right? And part of that was they paid a lot of money for it at the time. Everybody thought it was fucking insane that they paid that shit for $2 billion. But God, now they look like geniuses, compared to what it once was. I totally get that Bungie thought that they had a similar, or I'm sorry, the Sony thought that they had a similar sort of thing with Bungie, but I don't know. Minecraft was an indie game, and it was managed by this weird Swedish guy and his team of not very many people. And Bungie is not that, and has a lot more problems in terms of kind of like overhead and stuff. And I think just everybody, I don't know, everybody is I sort of think quadruple A games came, but nobody realized is sort of my end result here, right? Like that thing, that Skyrim Starfield thing that I'm describing, a 100-person team to a 1,000-person team. I think that's the birth of the quadruple A game, right? and we didn't even realize it. We didn't realize it was happening. We didn't, the fact that it took 10 years, 11 to oh God, 11 years? No way. No, it's longer than that. It's 13 years between GTA 5 and GTA 6. I don't know. It's insane. The fact that GTA 6 honestly is poised to make money, I kind of hope it's a flop, but is just like the
If
most sort of
GTA 6
wild.
is a flop, it'll be like devastating to the industry, right? Like I kind of agree with you on some level, but like it is like it's like, it's one of these it's such like a big tent pole that if it falls apart, it's gonna say weird things about the state of the industry. Um and the other part of
Yeah.
this is the reason GTA 5, we can go 13 years is it's a live service game too, right? Like GTA Online is like, apparently like a
But they're not
moneymaker.
launching with this is the crazy part. They're not launching on PC.
Mm.
They're only launching on PlayStation and Xbox. What? How how is this thing gonna make? I don't know. I don't understand it. Is every
It's gonna
single person
sell a quadrillion copies, buddy, and we're gonna be
okay?
mad about it. Like
You
I've
know
never
what? You're
played a GTA
probably
game.
right.
I'm not gonna play it, but
I
it's
played GTA 5, but I played GTA 5 on my Xbox 360, which is the last console I ever bought. So, you know. Yeah, anyway, weird stuff. I
like
do want to talk a little bit about the
what.
fallout of it all. A couple of new
Hold
announcements
on.
on Fallout, I guess. Oh, sure. Sure, sure,
I
sure.
would say I was thinking about this while we were talking. I know how we can save Bungie. I know the man for the job. His name is Bobby Kotick. Sony needs to call Bobby
Oh my
Kotick.
god.
Get him to save.
Listen, talk about leadership who's pushing.
Yeah.
In a weird way. There's nobody I really loathe more than Bobby Kotick. Actually, Bobby Kotick is like a heroically evil, villain. Do you know what I mean? Bobby Kotick is like Lex Luthor to the games industry or something like that. Like in a superhero. That's what I mean when I say heroically, like a superhero villain kind of. But at the same time, I guess he's kind of a villain like Magneto because he's certainly right about some things.
No,
Like we talked about that he was right about WoW. They just needed to push more content.
I would
You
say
know,
my
like
this is gonna sound insane. He's the Batman, right? He's the hero we deserve, right? Like
no, that's crazy to me. I mean, I guess I get it. The part that I think is very wrong for Bobby Kotick is the part where he treats video games like property. I think that's incorrect, right? And I think he was proven wrong about this, right? And he did it to a bunch of his own shit. Like World of Warcraft, I think is magical and it's a crazy game. Completely changed my life. Right, my life is so completely different because of World of Warcraft, all this other stuff. But it is good because like if Bobby Kotick had done the thing that he wanted to do, I don't think that he would have turned it into a success. I think he would. When you see what Bobby Kotick really wanted to do and the studios that he really could strong arm, he just drove those things into the ground. Tony Hawk killed, spiked like a volleyball on a Santa Monica beach, right? Guitar Hero murdered. And I love Guitar Hero. You'll never find somebody who loves Guitar Hero sort of more than me. But this guy killed it, and it's because he oversaturated the market. Exactly what it sort of this is the Lex Luthor of it, right?
no, so
But at the same time, right, he was sort of right that like the WoW team needed to push more content.
I think you're right. Like maybe the better analogy is he's the Punisher, right? Like he's
Yeah,
like
maybe.
you can't have the Punisher doing everything always, but like in the you know real morality about it aside, like in the mythos of the Punisher, right? Like sometimes people need killing, right? Like
Yeah, sometimes people really deserved it. He was right about World
like I think right
maybe.
now we need somebody like, and I think that's what Asha is ultimately, right? Like
Yeah.
is somebody who is more of a business person and less of a creative. And I think ideally you have a balance, but I think the nature of things is you cycle between the two, right? Like
Mhm.
you have a business era where things get driven into the ground, and then you rotate into a creative era until like that burns itself out because nobody makes anything, and you rotate between the two, and that's maybe just the nature of the industry.
Yeah, I also do want to say that I think part of it is about, a deep contraction to the bureaucracy, that works with sort of all of this kind of
Mm.
stuff. One of the studios that I was really interested I was really interested that they held on to was Obsidian. Obsidian fits the profile of quite a lot of their other, of their other games. Obsidian is also a company from Southern California, so I have a lot about them. Um, but like hypothetically speaking, you could see sort of a world where Obsidian gets spun out like Arcane, Double Fine or any
Do you know how big
types of
Obsidian
games.
is?
That's a good question. How big is Obsidian?
Because I think you're ultimately right. I think the thing that might save them is they like made these. I will call them base hits with Avowed uh and Outer Wilds. What do you?
I'm so right. Yeah, it's about 285 people,
Yeah. So
who
I
work
think
at
it's
Obsidian.
probably small enough that it's like you can get the bang for like if you can Avowed and Outer Wilds is good enough for a 300 person team, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. Part of it I also know is that Obsidian did a number of really smart things. Like one of the games that they made that is like quietly a big success for Microsoft is Grounded, right?
Hmm.
Which is a title I have never even touched. But like friend of the cast, a friend of ours, Katie, really loves Grounded and has talked a lot about Grounded and how game and a game that I don't know, whatever, like she and her friends sort of play or whatever. And so like they have sort of a nimbleness to them. But I actually think that Obsidian kind of, if I'm making the case that Bethesda ballooned, Bungie ballooned, all of these sort of titles ballooned because they said, oh, well, this sold Fallout 6 sold a gabillion copies, so I can make my development team gigantic, and I'm going to sell a bagillion times 4 copies, whatever the number is. I think Obsidian are the people who said, no, we're going to remain a AAA game, like a game studio. We're going to stay at this size, about the same size of, of people who worked on, I don't know, whatever, like New Vegas or that era of Obsidian. And I feel like that's maybe a good indicator that Microsoft is looking at the right kind of thing kind of moving forward, which I would be happy about, personally, right? It speaks to my theory of indification, right? That teams are going to be kind of the future, all this stuff, that things were getting really unwieldy in the back half of the 2010s and all the rest of that to be sort of true. But I do think that Obsidian maybe is kind of the crowning achievement here. And Obsidian also is the title, or I'm sorry, is the studio that's going to be getting the keys back to Fallout. So you think this is Asha pointing a gun at Todd Howard and saying, "Make me money with your Fallout."
It's basically do something, right? And like I think part of
Yeah.
it, like they what did they announce? They announced Fallout 3 in New Vegas remakes. They announced a
Hmm.
Fallout 5 project, and they announced that they announced like part of this too is like I don't have enough a ton of insight into this. Like I don't know how successful Fallout Shelter and 76 are, but apparently they're still going, right? Like ESO and Fallout 76 are like you know the two like like they keep getting updates. And I guess people are playing them, but like they're like just like kind of not a flip on the radar to me, right? Like like I as a WoW player, I'm aware of like Final Fantasy 14, and then whatever the
Yeah.
fucking flavor of the month is, like Genshin or whatever, right? But like like um uh ESO, Fallout 76, and there's a couple other games in this space too, like I guess like the Old Republic. Which I found out is the last remaining property in the Legacy timeline or the Legends timeline for Star Wars, which is an entire other conversation. Um,
I did not know that actually.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy. That totally it makes total sense to me now that I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but like they're
Well, the
like
thing I know about the Old Republic got sold, right?
that would
Was
not surprise me
isn't the Old
because
Republic
it was Bioware initially, but
yeah, it was BioWare initially, but are they owned by Daybreak? I'm sorry, this is like real behind the weeds. Oh, it's still published by EA, not by Daybreak.
okay,
Okay, yeah, Daybreak is a company that Daybreak are like the vultures of dead MMOs, right? They come in, they own all of the MMOs that all of the WoW killer MMOs that never got anywhere. Daybreak you know, owns those. Daybreak is the EverQuest devs is really the thing
okay,
that they,
yeah.
but
But yeah, to roll back to it, I think this is Todd, get off your ass, do something, right? And I don't know if necessarily that like I do not think that within the past 4 weeks Todd suddenly started working on Fallout 5. I think probably these
yeah,
things were all in progress, But, like, I think Asha probably lit a fire under their ass, and it's like the way, and you're going to announce these, and you're going to make progress on them within the next fiscal year, right? And you're going to have things to show so that people don't keep asking us, what the fuck is Todd doing, right? Like that kind of deal. Um,
I also think the Obsidian piece. So they also announced that they're collaborating with Obsidian again.
yeah,
This is to me. This reminds me of like after Suicide Squad was a big hit in 2016, David Ayer and Margot Robbie talked about, they signed a deal to do the next movie. The movie would eventually be Birds of Prey, and the Suicide Squad sequel would end up with James Gunn or whatever. All of that development hell is kind of like crazy. But it reminds me of that announcement. I remember that announcement being in this same sort of vein, where Suicide Squad is getting religiously clowned up, right? Everybody hates the DCEU. Suicide Squad makes a lot of money. It's an extremely profitable film, right? But everybody hates it. Everybody thinks it's terrible. It gets like 1% Rotten Tomatoes, all the rest, that kind of stuff. And the announcement of, well, Margot Robbie and David Ayer are going to reteam on the Harley Quinn movie, that reminds me of what this announcement is, which is there's a lot of bad press come out, try and change the news cycle. That's what I think that is kind of going on here. And so forcing Todd Howard to have the conversation with Obsidian, where I mean, I don't know how true this is, but my sus- sus- suspicion, no, what?
suspicion.
Suspicion, has always been that Todd Howard is pissed that Fallout New Vegas is better than Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and probably has been resisting this conversation for a long, long time, right? And but now we're at the point where you have to go back to Josh Sawyer. Well, it is Josh Sawyer. Back.
Uh,
Um, I just want to
Maybe.
confirm
Yeah.
that.
Uh, I think that's a two-way street. Like the things I have heard, and granted, these are rumors on the internet, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
Is that Obsidian wasn't particularly interested in doing another Fallout game, and hard to blame them, right? Like they famously got cheated out of a payday because they were like 1 point short or whatever on Metacritic or whatever. Um, but like I think you know I think Asha's also pointing the gun at Obsidian and being like, "Hey, Avowed and the Outer Wilds were fine, but we need it to be better. And you were real good at that Fallout thing. And this thing people talk about. Wildly successful TV series. How do we not have anything, right? Like
Yeah.
um,
And the crazy part is it's not like this is the first time. Microsoft has been trying to do this for a long time. There was, as far as I like understand, uh Halo Paramount Plus maybe?
there was a Halo show that
Like
nobody liked. But
there was a Halo show that nobody liked, but it got like 3 or 4 fucking seasons, and you
really,
know, it got 2 seasons. Okay. It got 2 seasons. Yeah, wow. And it's literally Master Chief, huh? God, I've never watched this show. And so just looking at the Wikipedia page and seeing that it was in fact Master Chief, John 117 is kind of insane. I kind of always thought it was like a spinoff or something. No, I guess it's just straight up. Uh anyway, yeah, Cortana's in here. Wow. Anyway,
oh,
they got the
Lou,
thing
just
that they
real
wanted.
quick. Lou in the chat has said that the shelter was 80K per day for 2 years ago, and served us 76 or 50 million net for the depth. So that's, I guess those are real successes. But those are
Wow.
not like those are like ZeniMax Studios, right? They're not
Yeah.
Bethesda Studios. But anyway, sorry, you continue with your point.
Yeah, and so uh I don't know.
Sorry,
What the fuck was I? What the fuck were we talking
Halo,
about?
Halo,
Oh
Halo.
yeah, the Fallout TV show. They've been saying they want to do this for a long time. Microsoft wanted to sort of like break into TV, make a big TV hit, and they did it with Fallout, right? And so the fact that there was nothing to Josh Sawyer is in fact, who was the Fallout New Vegas director, right? Who I think left Obsidian for he ended up back, all this other sort of stuff. Um, is the one who is sort of filming, this new sort of collaboration. My understanding is that that there's been sort of bad blood between Bethesda and Obsidian, and I am not surprised that if we're talking about Asha the Firebrand, that forcing forcing sort of the issue.
Yeah.
I also
Well,
just think that Fallout New Vegas is so like weirdly kind of like legendary. I don't know. Did you ever see the Obsidian remaster? Or not Obsidian, Oblivion.
I never played it. No, I just
I never played it either. I should. I loved Oblivion. Oblivion was like maybe one of the first like big RPGs I just like super deeply fell in love with.
yeah, no, I feel that same. Um, yeah, we should probably move on to some other stuff in this realm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're totally right.
Yeah,
Let's talk what, Magic? You want to talk Magic?
I want to touch real quickly on another set of layoffs, which is at Paizo. Paizo,
Oh,
yeah,
these layoffs are crazy.
yeah, Paizo. So what happened? Paizo one probably overhired. Two, their book stock got caught up in like, oh, this is complicated. I recommend for anybody who wants like some of the grimy details to go look at the Roll for Combat channel. Is Roll for Combat is essentially to Paizo what Paizo was to Wizards of the Coast, right? They are like a they
Really?
they make third party content for both Pathfinder and D&D. This is where Mark Seifter, who was a big designer of Paizo, he left to go to Roll for Combat. They do a bunch of like I said, third party flat books. They're generally viewed as high quality. They are currently in the process of launching another. It's like it's called Deathbringer. It's like a almost like a metal themed, like a I almost want to call it like Metallica type, like that kind of theming. Uh, Post apocalyptic RPG. They're crowdfunding that. Uh, but they have been in the industry for a while and they've got a couple good videos about what's happening. But because they were also caught up in the same thing too, which is Diamond. I forget the name of. I forget the. It's like Diamond Publishing or something. They were the people that warehoused their books, and they went under, and they had significant amounts of inventory for Paizo and for Roll for Combat. Um, and Diamond was owned by J.P. Morgan Chase at at the end of the day, right? And so when they went to get made whole, when they declared bankruptcy, they tried to seize or they tried to claim all of the books in the warehouse were theirs. And um, you uh and they were there's a word that I can't remember that is like they're essentially holding the books for Paizo, but Paizo still owns them. But the way you establish this, there's like a particular form you have to fill out, and apparently no one ever fills out this form because it's never really an issue. But from to give it from JP Morgan's perspective, right? Like if it's their property, it's their property, right? Like, and there's a big legal battle over it. And partially because of this, right, Paizo has to lay off like a bunch of people, at least in the short term. Um, a big part of this too, I think, is that like um basically the other big story to come out of this is that Archives of Nethys is no longer getting like this partnered status where they're getting very early access to the book so they can have the information up on Archives of Nethys like day of release. They're getting it. They're going to there's a whole bunch of drama there that I think is not germane to this conversation. Um, but the thing to take away from this, I think, is that like um people don't want to pay for stuff that people just don't want to pay for anything, right? Like
Yep.
um and Paizo gives away everything for free, kind of like all like the OGL means that all their stuff eventually goes up online, and they're not moving enough units, I don't think. But that's I don't know if you've got any further insight into this. I just want to kind of wanted to bring it up because it was kind of the same layoff
I
for them.
I was tracking all this stuff. The stuff with the court I found really podcast with Casey, who's maybe my favorite Paizo affiliated director or not director designer. He designed a lot of Starfighter 1.0, which obviously, I did not play a lot of, you did not play a lot of, but I don't know. He's an interesting guy. I like him a lot. And he was sort of talking about it and this weird interaction where you had Paizo inventory that they owned sitting in a diamond warehouse that JP Morgan is trying to uh kind of like liquidate out of, and so all of that being caught up is really like painful both for sort of Paizo and
So what the real killer probably is, and this is the thing I got from the Roll for Combat podcast, is Diamond, because they're in bankruptcy, isn't paying the warehouse, like isn't paying the people who own the warehouse, and it's
oh
like
sure.
somewhere in Mississippi. and so probably all of the climate control has been turned off, and probably all of that product is fucked, right? Like,
Oh
oh
my god, that's
yeah,
brutal.
yeah. So like,
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
because like again, this is the thing the World Cup guys were saying is like, even if ultimately Paizo gets control of the like gets control of these books, it's not like that magically comes to them. They have somebody has to go down there with a truck and transport like literal tons of paper, right? Which may or may not be ruined at this point in time. So, um,
Yeah, and the other thing, is that, they've completely borked all of this product kind of like going out to the public, right? This is something that Owen was sort of talking about where it's like, yeah, maybe they still own, $25 million of inventory in that warehouse or whatever, but it is not holding $25 million value because they thought it was going to be distributed according to a certain schedule and it's no longer being distributed according to that schedule. And so now they're in a position where not only they're kind of getting double fucked if you think about it, because they paid for a bunch of stuff that they thought they were going to release for like copies of Barnes and Noble. It's now no longer going to Barnes and Noble, right? Not that, I'm sure that was a huge seller for Paizo, but whatever. It's not going to Barnes and Noble, right? It's not getting picked up by kids' grandmas who go to the Dungeons and Dragons section and pick up the wrong book, right? Like that kind of thing. And, right, you are driving the players who were excited. If I am somebody who is really, really interested on the next Paizo product coming out, you're just driving me to go to Archives of Nethys or whatever, which was he didn't, this was all before the Archives of Nethys stuff, but like it is training your best customers to leave you, right? Um, to be missing like shipments and stuff like this, all of which I think is deeply brutal. I don't know. I don't have a real horse in this race. I think the big one, my big tabletop opinions are that D&D 5e is fine and people are dooming about it harder than they needed to, and I, I just kind of think that everybody kind of needed to shut the fuck up about that. But like, I just don't think this Paizo stuff is. I think it's kind of part and parcel a little bit of like the contraction of this thing, and also just like I think it was sort of always wrong for Paizo to go to Archives of Nethys so quickly. That was probably the real gem of a bad idea. They needed to walk away from because they were in fact just giving away their shit for free. Frankly, I dislike Archives of Death. I find it hard to use. I miss D20 PFSRD, but it's still easier to use than going out and buying.
yeah, and like I buy the books mostly because I want to support Paizo, right? And I like having the
Yeah,
physical artifacts, and I have the PDFs, right? Like they're the fastest way to get stuff, but like still at the end of the day, right? Like uh I'm not a, I'm most of the time going to archives and methods to actually look up stuff. The the thing that I have heard is that like the shift is probably going to be like one primarily digital and two also selling foundry packs, right? Because most people are a lot of people are playing on digitally, and a lot of people are even in person playing. Like you load up your foundry module on the television in the center. Like that's the way I play one of my games. It's like you load up on the television. It's great for hybrid too if you've got some people who are remote and some people who are in person. uh and like that's also like that's 100% profit, right? Or 100, you're minus design, like the labor, right? But like there's no material costs to that. um you know we'll see. D&D is gonna have, or Wizards is gonna have like a 6-story fucking building at Gen Con, right? Like they're back with a vengeance. The rumors are that they're gonna release basically like an official OSR product. Like how everybody's releasing fucking League of Legends Classic. We're gonna get fucking D&D Classic probably. But we'll see if
that's
that's
that
true
is
or not.
actually really incredible if they end up doing that. I wonder, like, man, what would that even look like? Because like it couldn't just be a re-release of AD&D, right? Like they have to do something new.
Yeah, I
God,
mean,
that's
like
so
maybe streamline the rules a little bit, but putting it on what's the D&D thing called?
oh, D&D Beyond.
Yeah, Beyond. Like so the thing that people think is the harbinger of this is that the Hasbro properties like GI Joe and Transformers all got like a set of like a set of TTRPGs from like a smaller third party company that they sold the license to. And they recently announced that there is essentially going to be a 5e version of these games that is coming to D&D Beyond soon, right? Like, um, because people want to be digital, right? Like, people want to be in Beyond, and like Foundry is good for like the weirdo, like me, the weirdo who likes Pathfinder, right? But like everybody wants to be in like
I do
the
like
fun.
D&D Beyond. It honestly, I mean, I basically everything that I do at this point for it's funny that even that we're like using Pathfinder. I guess obviously I don't want to like design your classes and stuff like that. But like monsters, I have not customized a monster in years at this point. I never use anything out of a monster. I just always write my own sort of stuff. And part of what helped me do that was D&D Beyond, because D&D Beyond just opens up, it just opens up a thing and you just fill in all of the little details and it kind of fills in some blanks for you, which is great. It's kind of all that was the last little neuron that needed to connect in order for me GMing to be able to 100% customize all of
Yeah. But that's that's that side of Wizards. I didn't want to spend too much time on that. Do you have any final thoughts on that, or should we move on to
No,
Magic stuff?
the other side of Wizards, the last side of Wizards, we did get a good segue in here. It announced the 2027 slate of Magic the Gathering. So Magic the Gathering for the rest of the year is in a pretty interesting spot. We're getting Reality Fracture, I think in the September.
I
That
think it's October,
what the
but somewhere in there.
yeah, what the fuck is the MTG 2026 sets? You know what's weird is what's the next set? Marvel
Hobbit.
just came out. Isn't it
It's
The Hobbit?
it's Hobbit, and it's like in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, wow. It is in a couple of I haven't seen anything from The Hobbit. I guess, spoiler season is where it is. Yeah, so next thing is The Hobbit, then Reality Fracture, and then ends at the end of the year. I've seen Star Trek pages. I have
Yeah,
or not pages.
I didn't see any. I have recently seen some Hobbit and some Reality Fracture stuff, but like I don't know, it felt weird. Like the Star Trek stuff felt weird. Maybe it was just kind of like an early spoiler thing or something, or I don't know. But I'm only seeing the Hobbit stuff recently. I was surprised too, because like Hobbit is like that's like one of the ones you would expect to like sell like hotcakes, right? Like it is kind of core, it like is pretty close to the source material, like pretty source to the magic kind of stuff. So it's not too far afield.
The Hobbit is in August? No way. It's got to be like pushed to September. No, my
No,
God,
it's
August 14th.
yeah, like I
That's
said, a few
less
weeks.
than a month.
Yeah,
What? This is incredible. Yeah, wow. And I'm looking at Scryfall. Okay, so they must have shown a bunch of stuff because I'm looking at Scryfall. I see a lot of the stuff that I had already seen. So, we saw Bilbo Thief of the Night, we saw Desolation of Smaug, Thorin Oakenshield, but
yeah. There's a
I'm
smog card too. That's like I only know this because people have been posting dumb combos. It's like 7 mana, flying haste, indestructible. Whenever non-combat damage is done to smog, generate a treasure token or generate that much as treasure. It's something like that. So people have been posting all sorts of dumb combos. Uh, uh but yeah.
yeah, okay. So they did eventually, they did eventually get there. Oh, great. They have a bunch of they have a number of things that they have new mechanics that are complicated. Don't understand. Storied, if you control 3 or more artifacts, legendaries, and you have an enduring story for the rest of the game. What? Okay. Recruit. Whatever the case may be. Anyway, they announced their 2027 lineup for in-universe titles only. So they did one thing that I would say is extremely, which is they did not announce their Universes Beyond titles on top of the universe within. So they previewed Reality Fracture, which is very, I don't know. They dressed it up. I kind of think it's stupid. Whatever. Um
You think Reality Fracture is
uh
stupid?
no, I just think the way they're talking about it.
Oh, okay.
I am down on Magic Story. I think Magic Story is quite bad, and the way that they talked about Reality Fracture as if it is they're trying to pretend that Reality Fracture had the same buildup that War of the and it didn't. It
Mm.
just fucking didn't, right? What is can you tell me how Lorwyn Eclipsed led into Reality Fracture?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Mark
Like it
Rosewater
fucking did.
said that it's gonna be said that
Yeah.
it
But
comes
Reality
after.
Fracture is kind of cool. I actually think Reality Fracture does look very sweet. It looks like a return to a set of magic that I kind of love. It also returns to a planeswalker centered set of magic. So there are 7 planeswalkers at least that are being shown, which I'm very excited for. And also it has the Echo verse, so it has all these kind of like fucked up versions of things. You know, you have the different Strixhaven colleges, but they're Hexhaven or whatever. I just think all of that is cool and is neat. Then we're doing Noctis, which is a fully underwater plane, which we've never been to before, we've never seen, but it's going to start the news story. Then we're doing Kamigawa Titanfall, but it's not Titanfall, it's called something Titan Grave, something like that.
Yeah, I thought so. Like I've seen a bunch of stuff. Like my initial thought with Pacific Rim, my favorite one that I've heard is like Neon Genesis, like Kamigawa Yan or whatever, right? Like
It is exactly what it is, because Ikoria is the kaiju, where everybody's monsters, right? The kaiju plane crashes into Kamigawa, where it's cyberpunk, and so they have mechs, and so the Kamigawa natives put together big mechs, and they're gonna fight off kaiju. What a beautiful, no notes, probably gonna be a set of all time, right? And then the final one, oh wait, shit, what was the third one? Because they announced 3. Oh, and then the final one is Zolfir,
that's like the
which
African
is,
inspired one, right?
yeah, I don't know. The lore here is very, again, I think we're taking some liberties with the lore. Zolfir is where Teferi, who's a famous planeswalker, he's been in the lore for a long time. Teferi very famously phased out his land in Dominaria, to save it from the Phyrexian invasion. This 90. It is a cool piece of sort of story, but he was never able to bring them back. They were kind of phased out for forever. Then the way that the new Phyrexia ended was Teferi phased Zulfir in on top of Mirrodin in order to bring all of these people from Zulfir to beat the shit out of the Phyrexians, which they successfully do. The new Zulfir, they did not really say this. I mean, maybe they did. I thought it was just subtext, but Zulfir is clearly Mirrodin. They talked about it having 5 suns, 5 layers like that. So Zulfir is our fourth return to Mirrodin. But it is now African Mirrodin because Mirrodin has, forged or combined with Zulfir, and so we're doing Afrofuturism, Afro fantasy sort of
It's the
stuff,
Wakanda
which
set.
is, yeah, it's just gonna be the Wakanda. But that's pretty cool. I don't know. That's neat. I like Teferi a lot. I'm just excited to see a new Teferi. So I don't know. Those are the three sets. What are you hyped for? What are you excited
Who
about?
do you think the Martin Freeman of Zolfir is going to be? Like the one white
Oh
guy
my,
that they bring.
Jace. Okay.
uh, I
I mean, it's crazy to me that Jace is the villain, the bad guy in Reality
reality
Fracture. I did
fracture.
not think that it seemed like that's where they were going. Frankly, what did I expect? Obviously, this is where they were going. But but it seemed at the time that they were trying to thread Jace is doing some crazy stuff. Who knows? How's it working? Whatever. But nope, he is the bad guy. He is just the villain of the set, apparently. So, I don't know. I'm hyped for Reality Fracture. I'm extremely hyped for the Neon Suite.
I'm
But
excited
we
for the
will.
underwater one, but I just like underwater stuff. So
I also like underwater stuff. I'm like, I'm cautious about that one. Like, obviously, I love fucking Aquaman. If this is Aquaman the set, God, come on, are you kidding? Like, I'm so in, right? But I just don't know where they're gonna go, how thrilled by. It's crazy that that's the closest one. I feel like I had a better understanding of what Kamigawa was just on a hook, and Zulfir was just on a hook compared to sort of Noctis. But hey, we'll see. Who knows?
yeah, I think part of the reason you have them easier on a hook is because you're familiar with them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like this is a new
Those
plane.
two are like keying into deep magic lore that I have encyclopedic knowledge of compared to whatever.
Yeah. Um, I think how many sets came out this year? Like how many like real sets came out?
7.
7?
7 total. I mean,
Okay.
depends. Do you count Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Because that set was small, but
Yeah, I would count
um,
because it's like a real set. Like,
yeah,
um, I think that I'm excited because it seems like they are at least partially listening to the people who want, you know, at least the universes within stuff to be respected, right? Which at the beginning of the year
yeah,
feel like it's kind of like, yeah, we'll do some fucking Lorwyn for you assholes, right? Like, that kind of stuff. Whereas it feels like they're winding that back a little bit. There was like a that I'm not sure of the exact quote that was the source of this, but there have been things that I've seen that's like it's crazy that Mark Wahlwater told like his core fans to go away, right? Which is like something like like I think it was something like Universes Beyond is where we're at, and you just kind of have to deal with that. Um, and I get that, right? Like I get that, like it's super profitable. Although I don't know how Marvel is doing, and I don't think anything will ever hit Final Fantasy levels, but I don't think Universe Beyond has to be bad, but I also, I appreciate that it seems like they are doing good, real things for the universes within, and I hope that they continue that trend and they get a better balance between that and the universes beyond stuff than we have had so far. Uh,
yeah. I think it all just depends on the properties, right? If
yeah,
they announce Universes Beyond, I don't
9/11.
know. What, I mean, they could announce a couple of Universes Beyond. I actually think that I would be like, even something Fallout, right? Like those are just Commander decks, right? But
Yeah.
like if they announce Universes Beyond Warhammer, Universes Beyond Elder Scrolls, and Universes Beyond, I don't know, one that I would still kind of go for, that I think would be sort of neat. Like maybe like Universes Beyond like I don't know, whatever, Fast and Furious, who cares, right? Like I think I would be okay. If they hit me with anything like Spider-Man and TMNT, right? Like I just feel like I'm not in it. I'm not with it. I'm not on board kind of thing. It's funny because I even now halfway through 2026, I think less of Lorwyn than I originally thought. I think both Lorwyn and Strixhaven are a little bit worse sets than I had originally anticipated them to be. Um
Lorwyn should have been 2 sets. Is my that's like it's a
oh,
take I think I
interesting.
stole from somebody, but like they should have done like the dark side, light side as separate sets, right? Like because that's this is I think the Distraction Makers was talking about this that like without the
Yeah.
blocks you lose this kind of like ability to kind of like follow through on ideas, and I think Lorwyn would have been the right way to do it because it has that like big divide, right? Like or imagine instead of doing Strixhaven Reality Fracture, we had a Strixhaven Hexhaven, and then that could lead to Reality Fracture as kind of like a pseudo block type of deal.
Yeah, actually, I do kind of think that that's sort of correct. There's also this thing of, so for instance, something I was thinking about is when they built up to the Phyrexians, the way that that happened was they were doing the individual, right? So it was the individual Kaldheim set, it was the individual Neon Dynasty set, it was the individual New Capenna set. Each one of those sets had a Phyrexian Praetor, right? So you had Vorinclex in Kaldheim, and this is where Vorinclex learns about this is where Vorinclex learns about the oh fuck, what was it? The world tree, right? The world tree would eventually create all the omens, right? In uh the Kamigawa set, Jin Gataxius creates the reality chip and uses it to complete a planeswalk. Complete is spelled PLEAT, not complete like complete the set kind of thing. Which is planeswalkers used to be immune to the Phyrexian oil, and now they and so we got Tamio, who is the first completed planeswalker in that set, which is like crazy and cool. Then in New Capenna, you find out that there is this substance Halo that all the gangs are fighting about in New Capenna that can counteract the Phyrexian oil, right? This is kind of angel dust. It is drugs, but it is it's basically heroin. You use space heroin, okay, to deal with the zombie oil. All right, Mango, does this make sense to you lore wise? It made sense to me at the time. Okay, which is
It
why I'm
make
not
it
right.
makes sense to me that Star Trek is going to be a set at the end of this because this sounds like a Star Trek plot, right? Like
Yeah, I guess so. With
you got to get the
Lorwyn,
heroine from the gangster planet, right? Like
yeah, with like everything with Aether Drifts, with into Tarkir, into Lorwyn, into Strixhaven. Strixhaven had Ral, who is clearly the Echoverse version of right the black Ral Zarek rather than red or a blue Ral Zarek. It just going into Reality Fracture, it doesn't have the same sort of. I can't tell you what Lorwyn Eclipsed is about, or explain to you how Lorwyn Eclipsed leads into Reality Fracture. And I really want. That's the thing that's killing these sets a little bit for me. Plus, also the designs are not amazing for what I'm looking for. Command. I was thinking about this the other day. It's kind of wild that Lorwyn did not have a blue-white Merfolk commander. You know, like that's a Merfolk archetype that people
I
that
think
people want that people want to be able to make.
I think
There's a
it.
guy for it, but he fucking sucks.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. Because there's
Yeah,
like
like Sig.
the flipping. Yeah, flip
Yeah.
Sig could flip and do both. Yeah. Um. Um.
So I don't know. We'll see.
I am. The other thing here is that they also announced this like mystery commander booster, and like I've been like trying to
Mm.
because I'm gonna be at Gen Con, right? Um. Everybody thinks it's this like mystery event with Gavin Verhey, right? Is that's what it's gonna be, and they're not all sold out, but I don't have any room in my schedule for it, and it would be to just play it, right? Like apparently the only way to like actually like I had thought I might be able to buy a box. Apparently the only way to do it is like to fucking fight for festival in a box slots
Oh,
online. So, guess that's what we're all
that
doing one
sucks.
day is like, trying
Yeah,
to
I was seriously. I was like, I'm just gonna hand you $200 or something. Like, get me one, right?
yeah.
I frankly, I would like to give you $2,000. Get me 10, right? Like,
Well,
if
what
I
we are
could just
probably going
come
to
on.
have to do is, all get in line at like, on
Four
for
in the
the
morning, yeah.
lair and all of us like, try and buy two of them and like, hopefully at least one of us hits, right? Like, type of deal.
Yeah. I want that so bad. That
Yeah.
to me, that's like, it's so perfect. It's so, anyway.
I was never like so I was looking to maybe get a second mystery booster too, since I still have that hanging around. Because I figured, oh, maybe if I get a second one, I'll open one. Instead of just like letting it sit on the shelf until we can figure out how to play it at the time to draft. But I knew that I wasn't gonna get one when I got into the lobby, I set up my order, and then I don't know how they do it. I think they randomize it somehow, but it's like, oh, you have more than an hour to wait. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna get it. And then the time started dropping by like dropping in like 15-minute chunks. It's like, oh, I see. It's sold out and everybody's dropping out of the line as soon as they get told that that there's no more product left. So um it's gonna
Hey,
be
they did a secret lair that's print to demand again. Maybe they'll do it again. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, to me, this stuff is like the coolest, right? I really want to dress that mystery booster box. I actually kind of think that maybe we or something like that, where if you hold all of the cards together, we can just redraft the same group. People do this sometimes.
Yeah, like essentially make a
Um,
cube.
yeah, exactly. But I need to refill on the. Should have done this in proxy. We talked about it.
Yeah.
We will eventually later this year, after I have saved money, um, on my beautiful new graphics card that is going to play Starfield so amazingly. Um, uh, I think we, we'll do a proxy order. We'll get all those plane chase cards. We'll like I don't know. We'll put together all of those extra little decks that we talked about and get a new refill of the commander draft cards.
Reminded me of something found on my shelf. I have uh a full set of the archenemy cards. So we
Wha-
could do we could do that at some
That's
point.
amazing.
Yeah.
Where did you get those?
I don't know. I just like they came with something I bought at some point and they were just sitting on my shelf. I'm like, oh, what's this on? It was like it's all the fucking it's the I don't know if it's just like a particular set
That's
of them, but yeah, I've
That's
got
cool. I would love to play Arch Enemy Commander. I actually think Arch Enemy. We played a bunch of Arch Enemy Commander because Arch Enemy came out right when we were leaving college, I think, and I played a bunch. I played that in Plane Chase, and we played them both as commander. But like part of it, I don't know, it's so different. One of the things I was talking about when we were at his house was uh when I used to play in college, the reason that these game modes were so fun is because we only had one deck. I had one deck.
Hmm.
I had Rexiel the Risen Deep. I never won ever in my life. You know, the way I won on that with that deck was I time stretched because you could pay it to play a 10 mana commander, a 10 mana card like that. What we're doing is we're constantly buying new decks to play with. And so, you know, like I love the idea of rolling the D12, right? But I wonder if there will ever be a time when we just stay, well, these are my decks. You know my decks. I'm going to pull this card out of this deck because we spend so much time having to explain every single play, right? And I wonder if we'll get to a point where we just kind of go, "Oh, this is my blank deck. You have seen it 100 times, right?" You know,
Yeah.
in the same way. That's what made Arch Enemy and Plane Chase so fun at the time. Was I had played this deck into the ground with all of my friends, exciting ways that we could play these same decks against one another, and we found them in Arch Enemy and Plane Chase. I wonder if that'll be the same sort of. But I think Arch Enemy is sweet. I think Arch Enemy, where 3v1, somebody has the Arch Enemy and they're playing just like a really powerful, strong kind of turbo deck. I really wonder if they can pull out a win.
Yeah. No, I agree. Uh, I would love to try. I'd love to try any of the things we talked about. I do like the scry down thing we've been doing, but that's obviously a very minor change.
I think Arch Enemy, you play a lot of good decks for Arch Enemy. It's like that Ariat Theft deck would be an excellent Arch Enemy deck because it sucks. You know what I mean? Like watching somebody steal all my fucking creatures. You have no
Oh,
idea. God, is that a
that's
mean
like the
fucking deck
only
to play?
like I know I play aggravating decks, but that is the only game I've played where I felt like Ryan and Rachel physically wanted to hurt me. Like
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I'm really glad that we pulled out the win there. There were a number of times that game. I actually really liked the two-headed giant format for it. I thought that was perfect. It sped up the game quite a lot, which I think is excellent. God, so good. Um that bothers me the most is turn length. We need a clock. All I want to do is I just want to put a clock in the center of the table, and when you take your turn, you tap the clock and it starts a new thing. It's 0, so you can just see when somebody takes that 5-6 minute turn. God, I just want it. All I think you have
just
to
for the
have,
shame value.
not even for the shame value. I think it'll get people to play faster. Is really what I'm saying.
Right.
So imagine I'm me, right? And let's say people accuse me of this. I think I take fast turns, but maybe I don't, right? I think I take fast turns. Without a clock, nobody can really challenge me on that. But in a world where I am playing and there's a clock in my eye line, and I know that everybody is looking at it and watching it, it's going to make me play faster. And I think that's true for all of us will play faster, just if we understand the passage of time by seeing the clock in the center of the table. Do you know what I mean? And so that's where I want to start. But like, obviously, we can get into chess clock.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I think so. To your point, I don't think you take turns that are that long. And I like when I started the meme about playing tequila while you were journaling
yeah,
with Decasia. That was when you would just kind of put Decasia together, and it was taking you longer to figure out like how to actually work it. I think now you've got it down, right? And this is to your point about like we keep changing decks, and like I don't know half the deck cards in my own deck, right? Like of decks, right? Like I need to play them enough to get some mastery over them to understand like the right lines to play for things. Um,
Yeah, honestly, I also think like I have not won a game on Takasia in maybe the last like 8 or 9 games I've played. Like Takasia ripped really hard when nobody really understood what it was doing. And then I upgraded it and I have only lost.
well, because
So I'm sort of thinking that like a combination of people are smarter about it, they understand what the deck is, and also that, I maybe made bad choices when I thought I was upgrading. I think I made the deck worse, to be honest. Who knows?
well,
I've just been unable to pick up a win on that deck.
what is your win condition if you don't cast Approach of the Second Sun?
Um, there's a lot of stuff that I can do with attacking because there's a couple of other like win conditions. One of them is um looping infinite turns, which I have
Okay.
done. I won one game by looping infinite turns. I just where I said at this point I just take infinite turns. Nobody has disruption for this? Okay, I take infinite turns and I kill all of them, kind of thing, and we all just scooped at that point. The other one is there's a couple of offensive Acacia, which are Miri when she taps. Only one creature can block that combo.
Mm.
So then I can tap Miri with Takesha's ability and then full send my board. Um, and that's enough to kill. And then there's also an enchantment in there that like there's the number of where it's like you get creatures get +X+X equal to the number of creatures that came into play,
Oh,
and you know, so you play a bunch of creatures, or you have there's a couple of combos where you
right.
tap make a creature and then intruder alarm stuff. So there's like a couple of those, but yeah, Takasia mostly has actually just been iced out because people killed Takasia extremely.
I was gonna say, I think that's the big thing is that it is very reliant on Takasia to like, it's like a very commander focused deck, right? Like that
Yeah,
is,
like the whole deck is about here are a bunch of creatures who have cool payoffs if you can tap them at will. And Takasia is the thing that gives them the ability to tap at will. And people just I play Takasia and she instantly dies and I go, okay, all right, fair
yeah,
enough, you know.
yeah. It is like that's something I have found myself building better around, which is like not having them be so like having ways to win without the commander there, right? Like I have a couple of in that area deck. I have a couple of enchantments that will still work if I'm not casting them to capture things, right? Like so. Uh,
Yeah, I'm thinking about that more and more these days. I totally understand it now. I used to really I mean it sucks because it's against the spirit of the you
the
know
format,
sort of against the spirit of the format a little bit. Yeah. Like the spirit of the format I think is about find a cool commander, build a synergistic deck around it. But people talk about good stuff, right? Where you just run all of the best cards in your colors and your commander doesn't really matter at that point. You just kind of have a commander. It's just, oh, I'm playing red green good stuff, right? I actually think that kind of just defines my Ruby deck. Ruby is there to be a mana rock on turn two. Turn two, I'm going to tap Ruby for mana, and then the deck takes. There's really not much more to her than that. You can kill Ruby; it's never gonna take the deck apart. But you kill Takasia, you kill Quintori, you kill just a number of other sort of like decks that I have. And the whole deck kind of falls apart, and that sort of sucks. That sort of to like deal with, but I don't know. Yeah,
yeah. Well, we've been going for a while. What have you been doing with your past 3 weeks?
I don't know. I've been playing a lot of XCOM. I have basically beat XCOM 2, War of the Chosen. Did you ever play War of the Chosen, the big update, the
No,
expansion that they made?
or if I
Okay.
did, I never.
I
I would say I always got caught in XCOM too. Like I would be like I'd play it for hours and hours, then like lose a battle and then restart, and just because I just ended up playing on Iron Man, and I did that
I
like
also
a
insist
dozen,
on
two
playing
dozen
on Iron Man,
times.
and normally I'm on my Iron Man campaign 9. Okay, I have not completed 9 Iron Man campaign. I think I've completed 2 or 3. Um, the first time I played with Save Scumming. The second time I played Iron Man. But that also includes actually I think my true number of Iron Man campaigns is probably like XCOM War of the Chosen, XCOM 2 use different save things, and I'm on Iron Man 9 for typically what happens is I get butt fucked on a on a mission where just all my best guys all die, and I kind of quit out on there. Um, this has not happened in this run of XCOM 2 so far. I have had a number of really brutal missions where 3 of my very best people, my first colonel died, my first major died. I had one girl who was my medic. She was like all of my healing was this one kind of character. She died, and those all suck. And every time that happened, I just quit out of the game. I would like finish the mission, but then I would quit and I would move on. Um but I kept coming back to it. And I guess for as long as that, I don't know, that I just keep coming back to it. I have now killed all of the chosen though. And the thing that I think kind of XCOM a little bit of the worst is you now have the like kind of perfect equipment where like you have the best armor, you have the best weapons, you get these really powerful weapons off the chosen when you kill them. I've now killed all 3 chosen, so I have just like the best possible sort of weapons. And the way that I always do this is I put off the main quest until the very end, and now the main quest is like piss easy, and I don't know if I'm actually going to complete it or not. I'm maybe just going to give myself the win and pretend I beat the game, even though I have technically like 6 or 7 more missions to go through to learn all of the lore and do or when killing the chosen really feels like the end game to me. Killed all 3 of these chosen, power, pulled up my rest of it. Um, I played Stellaris. I've been playing a ton of fucking, which I have also been restarting all the time. I am now doing a terrible thing in Stellaris, which is like looking up kind of builds. Uh, Stellaris is just a bigger game now, and there's a big infrastructure for it, and there's a big multiplayer community, and the multiplayer have recognized that there are meta builds, right? Where they understand how the game works really well, and they say this civic goes really well with that civic, and I end up going, oh, I want to play Death Cults. So Death Cults is a civic where you have certain pops who are doing a job, and that job is Mortal Initiate. And every 5 years, you click a button, and all your initiates die, and you get a big bonus for it. It's like, cool, Death Cults. And I made 5 empires in a row where I was playing with Death Cults, and I just was losing. I was doing bad. This was not great. And I kept restarting and tinkering, and got to this where I looked up best Death Cults build, right? And I read a Reddit thread, and ooh, okay, this seems fun. This origin plus that other civic plus this species characteristic, whatever. And I don't know. That's fun. That's interesting. That's sort of something. And then the last one of these that I've been playing is BattleTech. Do you remember BattleTech, the Paradox BattleTech from Hairbrained?
I do. I do.
Um, I really love that game. I've played a lot of hours of that game. Can I see how many hours I've played of that game really quickly off the top of my
I think
head?
I kickstarted
I played a
BattleTech. I haven't played a
yeah,
ton
I
of
played
it, but
171 hours of BattleTech. I played 208 hours of XCOM. I was playing BattleTech and XCOM, and BattleTech really lost out to XCOM. Mostly because it just feels so much more linear than XCOM does in terms of kind of like the breadth of the customizations that you can do and the different guys that you kind of set up and all the rest of that. I don't know. I might go back to BattleTech. I really love BattleTech. I've always had a really time playing BattleTech. Getting up to those big mechs. I love melee mechs in BattleTech. I like playing a big heavy guy that runs up and just punches, some like shooter in the back line sort of. Um we'll see. We'll see how far I go into sort of BattleTech. So those are the big things that I've been doing. I've been paying attention to. I've been watching a lot of TV shows. I've watched the first season and a half of Pose. Do you remember my Pose phase from years ago?
Pose. No.
Pose is a gay show, sort of a trans show in a way. It's about the
Uh,
ballroom culture in New York during the AIDS crisis. It's very gay. It's very trans. So it stars all these gay and trans, you know, actors and actresses, and they're great. I don't know. It's great. I never saw the 3rd season. The 3rd season was the final season. I'm back on that, watching that. Um, uh, I started watching some other stuff. I started watching Clone Wars. I just like bounce every time I back into it. I need to just like skip to a later portion of Clone Wars where it's good again. I was watching the episodes with fucking gods, like the light god
oh
and the dark
yeah.
side god, and I was just like, this sucks. Which I think that's the popular thing, right? You've said this, somebody said this to me maybe, that like that is true, that people hate these episodes and they suck.
I also think that if I remember correctly, those episodes are the ones that exist simultaneously in Legends and in current canon. Like it's like somewhere
Ugh.
around there is when the crossover happens.
Okay, well, I watched like 2 of those episodes and I thought it sucked so that I went and I watched Avatar, the James Cameron movie.
Yeah.
And then I watched Avatar 2 and Avatar 3. Unfortunately, Avatar 3 is not very good. I'm sorry to tell you. They just do the whales again. It's crazy. I'm so mad.
Did for Clone Wars, did you watch it in like chronological order?
I resumed I guess so. I resumed where I was
No, no. So
when I
you have
which was somewhere in season 3.
they kind of wanted to do it as a anthology type thing, but there are like clearly episodes that come after. You have to like look up a guide in order to like watch them in like in universe
Yeah,
chronological order. But that
okay.
like goes away after like I think it's like the third season or so. Then like you just kind of watch them through and it's fine.
Yeah,
Uh,
I went to Disney Plus, I hit resume, you
okay.
know, on the thing. I was just like, where did I leave off? Because it gives you that like previously on whatever. I was
Yeah.
like, that maybe that'll be good enough. Just kind of back into it without too much trouble. And I was in this section with the fucking gods or whatever, and I was just like, you know.
Yeah, the
So
manifestations
yeah.
of the force or whatever. Oh. Have you gotten to Meber Gascon yet? Which is like those episodes are bad, but they're like fun in a shit posty way, right? It's like
This is such a fucking glup shitto.
no, he is like the Glump Shadow, right? Like
Bieber Gascon. I have never seen this guy before in my fucking life.
he like it's Droid Squad is like the actual series of episodes, but Meber Gascon is like rides around the head of one of the droids, right? Like that is like
Okay.
it is like is a dumb side arc, but it is so stupid that it's fun, right? I at least enjoy it from like a best of the worst type of perspective. Whereas
D
like
Squad. Okay, yeah, Droid Squad. Guess. All right. Bieber Gascon.
he's like the
Cool.
glove
I don't
shit.
know. The Glup Shitto tweet is so fucking good. It perfectly describes.
So like everything else on the internet, I think like do you think Alon Sleaze Bagano is a glove shitto? Like what in your mind
What?
is the
Who
definition?
the fuck? Launcey Bagano? What? Who's that?
He's the guy that says, "Do you want any death sticks?" And Obi-Wan says, "You want." that,
I think yes, because I didn't know his fucking name, right?
what in your mind is definition of a glove shitto?
I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's because like we could
Where
probably
are
do
the
a whole episode
boundaries
on
of
this.
Glup Shitto? Because like my first instinct was like a minor character. Boss Nass was is a Glup Shitto.
I think
If you
Boss Nass
told me
is
that they
too
were
real to be a
but
glove
then I was
shitto.
thinking, yeah, exactly. I was thinking, wow, Boss Nass is maybe like too much. Like a Glup Shitto is like not the main guy, but like one of those side guys on the Confederate Council. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like the head of the banking clans. That guy's got to have a name. That guy's going to be a fucking Glup Shitto, right? Like, but then I think about Glup Shittos in like other properties. This is really what's like a Warhammer Glup Shitto? What's like a World of Warcraft Glup Shitto? You know what I mean? Because I think there are a lot of them. Like
like
Hex Lord Malakras is kind of a Glup Shitto, but he's like the main guy in like the story questing. You know?
like I don't know. To me, like there's an aspect to glove shitto that's like also kind of like there's a ridiculousness to the character, right? Like you give it to me that Dex from Dex's Diner is a glove shitto because he's
Okay.
a fucking like he's like a diner runner on fucking Coruscant. Like what the fuck is that,
Hmm.
right? Like, but like like the head of the banking clans. I wouldn't call him a Glup Shadow because even though he's kind of like a minor side character, he's kind of like like you would expect to see him in the background of like a Star Wars shot, right? Like I don't think like any of the Ewoks on Endor I wouldn't call Glup Shadows because they're like they're like part of like what I would reasonably expect to be part of the Star Wars universe and also like not ridiculous on their face, right? Like if Jar Jar Binks was not a foreground character, I think he would be a Glub Shadow because he's like a comic character, right? Like his, I don't know, like um, uh, what's the fucking thing from like the new movies? It's like Bib Din Frog the
Babu Frick.
Babu Frick.
Babu Frick is a Glup Shitto.
I think he's a little too foreground to be like a true Glub Shadow, right?
Yeah.
But it like, and by foreground I mean like in a primary movie, right? Like if Babu like is I don't know.
I
It's
also don't know that anybody is excited. Part of what makes a Glup Shitto, people are like crazy excited to see this person. Do you know what I mean? So, for instance, in Warhammer lore, okay, there are 4 Lords of the End Times. There is Nagash the Lord of the Undead, the guy who discovered necromancy. And all of the vampire characters in the Tomb Kings or whatever, they always say, you know, like you search for the books of Nagash, which are the very books of necromancy. There's Thanquol, who might as well be the Lex Luthor of the Warhammer fan. The Skaven, you know, he's the Skaven rat lord. You know, he invented the storm fiends, which are the big rat ogres with the flamethrowers that shoot fire on them. He's crazy. There's the Glotkin, who had his own book and his three brothers. They all turned to Nurgle and all other stuff. And then you have Boris Todbringer, who is like kind of the guy who thinks that Karl Franz is sort of a dickhead, who is inside of the Empire to go, Karl Franz, you don't believe in the old ways. You believe too much in gunpowder. You should venerate the old gods, whatever. Like a couple of books or whatever. And everybody is irrationally fucking excited that Boris motherfucking Todbringer is gonna be in Total War Warhammer 3. Okay? That's Glupshido. That's a Glupshido thing.
Oh, interesting. See, I
This minor lord of the Empire, whose main contribution to the lore is losing his eye to Kazrak One Eye, so that both Kazrak One Eye and him both don't have both don't have eyes, right? And kind of being the Batman to Karl Franz's Superman in like council meetings internally of the Electric Counts. That's Glupshido behavior. Am I making sense?
it is, although I didn't. It's like to me that aspect of it was like either like fake or like like ironic or like only for like super nerds, right? Like
Okay.
like I would say Morbius is a Glupshido of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like he has his own movie, so it kind of doesn't count. But like that like if like
The fact that he has his own movie.
right like or maybe like
Funny stuff.
like Jon Snow's character, whoever he's supposed to be, like the actor who plays Jon Snow, who like showed up at the end of Eternals, maybe that we never heard of him again. Like he's like the night character, like this. I don't know enough of these fucking Marvel characters. Like I don't know. The thing that crossed my mind is like Fibblethip a Glupshido?
Oh, interesting. Kind of, yeah. I actually think, yeah, I think Fibblethip is Glupshido. I actually think a lot of like, you know, like Rakdos is a Glupshido. Like the fact that Rakdos shows up on Thunder Junction is sort of like a Glupshido sort of.
I
You know what I
think
mean?
Rakdos is too like Rakdos feels like a real character to me, right? Like I'm not
What
as
is
much of
his characterization?
he's the Rakdos, right? Like that's the name of the
I
that's
mean, like I recognize that he's like a guild leader. He's like the, you know,
yeah.
whatever. But I don't know.
He's the embodiment of like he is who I think of when I think of Red Black, right? Like
Yeah, that's true.
and maybe
I
that's
guess
because
he it does like name the color pair, which is like a, you know,
yeah.
we don't call it Stinger Quill, we call it Rakdos.
Yeah, like who would I think of like Dovin, who we've talked about. Dovin feels kind of
Right.
Club to me, right? I like
See, Dovin, the funny part about Dovin is he is a real like Dovin is much more of a real character than Rakdos. Dovin like works with Nicol Bolas. I mean, part of this is I know the lore,
yeah,
you know?
that's fair.
Like Nicol Bolas recruits Dovin as like a white blue planeswalker on Amonkhet. Sorry, not Kaladesh actually. It's where he gets his sort of start. And he comes in, he does a bunch of important stuff in War of the Spark. He shuts down the, you know, I don't know, War of the Spark is crazy. But anyway,
So I think for a true Glupshido, you need like an aspect of goofiness, which I think why Fibblethip fits, right? Like
yeah, Fibblethip definitely.
yeah, but like for Warhammer, it like if you pick like some orc, right? Like I could, like that's where I would find like like somebody who's like a little bit goofy. Like the Boris sounds like a Glupshido to me because like even if in like inside his own story he's serious, like the way you described him as kind of being like
The community has memed him,
yeah
right?
yeah
Yeah. Like
like
there's a whole part there's this whole part. All of this is like esoteric Warhammer, not even Warhammer it's like the Warhammer fan base turned Boris Todbringer into a Glupshido. And part of that was like when they did the Eastman reveal, they had a guy burst in on one of the live streams dressed as Boris Todbringer and he goes, "Where's Kazrak?" And you know, and like that moment was so funny in like the live stream. And that live stream literally 9 years ago. Like it was a long time ago. But like that I think it was one of the guys from the Yogs cast, part of what made it also. It was like a famous fucking YouTuber essentially.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, like I think you could turn a glup like a serious person into a glup shido with enough memification, right?
Yeah, like the
Just like it
Noise
did like
Marines
Warcraft.
made like if there was a named Noise
Oh,
Marine, yeah, right. Or like
yeah.
Alpharius and Omega, like the Alpha and Omega Primarchs are Club
Yeah, yeah,
Shidoui,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The Primarchs are kind of glip shido, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying to think what's like a good like Warcraft glip shido. Maybe Zakan, like the Zappy boy. He's kind of like an ascended glip shido. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Who
Grifta
like
maybe.
what? Yeah, maybe. I
Like,
don't know.
he's a
Yeah.
little too on the nose, right? Like no one's excited to see Grifta show up.
Yeah. But like but yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe Grifta. Uh does a club shadow have to have a story purpose? That's kind of how I think of it, but like maybe not.
I think you have to kind of like at least ironically pog when you see him, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, who would that be for Warcraft? Like, I don't know.
Dagrin, when Dagrin came back and War Within maybe? Did you pog seeing this baby as a teenager? Not really.
Mm,
I don't know.
uh,
It's funny because Warcraft is so ripe for Warcraft probably has like hundreds of glub shit, but like maybe we're too close to it. We can't even see the glub shit-oness of them as we
I
play
think maybe um Mechatork in the Legion cinematic
Yeah, okay. I
because
can see
like
that.
the
Sure.
in my mind the reason they put him in the Legion cinematic is because that's when fucking oh, what's the red panda YouTuber? I can't remember his name. He had like the fucking shitty history of Warcraft, and he had this comment about like the leader of the gnomes who has not shown up in any cinematic, right? And then like the immediate, like he shows up in the Legion cinematic. It's like that's why. So that's my kind of best guess. The problem is that like Warcraft is actually good about like not like memify like all the memes like Illidan is not a Glepshido because he's too central, and like the
Yeah.
mimification always happens to like these central-ish characters, right? Like like Dreadlord Jaina, right? Like would be like it's like the closest thing I could like. It has to be something that's a
Yeah,
meme,
this is why I was thinking Zakan, because he
yeah,
starts as Zappy Boy, right?
right, yeah,
This troll in the cinematic who zaps, and then they turned him into a we know that he wasn't supposed to be anything like that. But like because players had this
yeah.
this big reaction to him, they kind of like invested more. I don't know. Yeah.
Red shirt guy is a Glepshido. Um,
Red shirt guy. I bet that there are 100,000 Star Trek Glub Shitos.
oh yeah, almost certainly. Like, and the thing that's fun is that so many of the extras, the people who play the extras, end up playing different characters. Like, I think the extras in Star Trek are like their own like form of Glepshido because it's like, oh, that's the same guy as that guy, right? Like, um, type of deal. But the the problem is that like you don't have minor characters crossing over in the background as much, right? Like, maybe the closest thing is like in the next generation, Miles O'Brien is a background or it's like a secondary character who shows up every once in a while. He is a primary character in Deep Space Nine. Um, I don't know if that like I don't know. It's weird because like I think part of it is that we also don't engage like I don't engage with enough like ancillary Star Trek media for me to identify these. I think that's actually a big part of it, right? Is that like the glove shadow effect is strongest if there's like a broad base of things and like you spot him in like an ancillary piece of media, right? Like there's Warcraft is almost all in World of Warcraft, so there's
Mhm.
nothing like to spot like a Glepshido in, right? Like part of the Glepshidoness is like if you watch the Ahsoka, like if I watched fucking you know season two of I don't know, season 3 or 4 of Andor, and fucking Meeber Gascon showed up in the background, I would fucking lose my shit because that's so fucking stupid, right? But that it's because it's or like if Meeber Gascon showed up in like the Last Jedi or something, right? It's got I think there's like a crossover aspect between like ancillary media and like Warhammer's good for this because there's like so many fucking Warhammer games, right? Like if or like Warhammer properties, right? Or especially 40K, right? Like if you know, some character, like if like an see, the thing is I don't know if Warcraft or Warhammer characters, but if some ancillary characters showed up in like if Alfarius showed up in fucking uh like in Rogue Trader, I might pog, right? That kind of thing. Um
Yeah.
yeah. Well, now that we've talked about Glupshidos for half an
The
hour,
anatomy of a Glupshido,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Uh, say on my side, I've been playing Marathon. I beat Mina the Hollower, which I thought was I kickstarted it. I didn't get around
Is
to
it
playing.
good? Do you because Shovel Knight? How do you feel about Shovel Knight?
I played through Shovel Knight when it came out, and I enjoyed it, but like I didn't care enough about Mega Man to like get into it, like because like that's kind of what it's evoking, right? I so like I didn't attach to Shovel Knight in the way that some people did. I enjoy a lot of like A Link to the Past, like some of those classic Zelda games, and that's definitely what Mina the Hollower is emulating. And I really enjoyed Mina the Hollower for that reason. Um, I did kind of get to a point where I just kind of wanted to finish it. Um, there was only one boss that like really like I thought was unfair. Um, but everything else like was felt like it had enough difficulty to feel like it was a reasonable challenge. I did get to the point where it's like I don't care enough to 100% this game. I'm just gonna kind of like like I'm gonna stop and just like finish the story because like there's often with games I will get to the point like there is a point in the game where you get like the checklist screen and you can like go find every jot and tittle type thing. And I got to that point where I was like, I just want to finish this game, and I went and I finished it. I am a little bit down on the story, but I'm a little bit more open to talking it. But it was a fun time. It took me like 23 hours to beat. Um, and I had a perfectly good time with it. I would recommend it if you like, classic Zelda style games. Um, and, it's got interesting combat. Um, uh, that kind of stuff. Um, but I don't find myself wanting to run back to it. What else have I been playing? I've been playing Soul Chesta, which is like just it's one of these roguelites. Um, it's basically it's like a 4x4 grid, and they have like enemies and rewards in it. You can pick a row, and you'll like percentage wise drop into one of them, and you've got like stats. It's a very simple game. I'm probably reaching the end of my patience with it because like the progression is just a little too slow to really to really keep me. Um, but it's a fine game. It's one of these cheap things that I don't mind checking out. Yeah. Other big thing is uh my wife and I alternate TV seasons. My wife's last season was the Ken Burns American Revolution documentary. We finished that, and so we have entered the era of things we watched in high school that we want to show each other. So my series is House. So we're making our way through the first season of House, and it's a fun show. I don't know enough about medicine to care about the accuracy of it, so that's fine for me. I suspect it, or my read on it, especially seeing some stuff like there's occasionally a thing that I will know something about. Like there is an episode where House is in the clinic, um, which is a thing he famously hates to do, and he's playing a Game Boy. And he's playing Metroid, and they show like the play of like the framing of the scene is clearly that this person is supposed to have like lost, and it's Samus going into a Chozo Satchel. Like that's not a bad thing. That's not a losing. That's not like a game over screen, right? Like you could have, like you didn't even have to show the screen. Why did you do this? But so I suspect
Mhm.
I suspect most of the medicine isn't great. Um, but it is fun. It is a fun to watch because um having watched some British Hugh Laurie, right? Like some of his stuff from like what when he was a comedic actor, like House works because Hugh Laurie is a comedic actor, right? And like the sardonicism um works as like, it's a funny show because of that. And like I feel like
I tried
yeah.
watching House a long time ago, and I thought a lot about, um, what drove me away from it. I think it was actually the body stuff. It's funny because I'm doing quite a lot of, like, body horror stuff right now in D&D, more so in the Scarecrow King, which is explicitly a horror game, than, Ripples in the Sand. But you guys have seen some of that stuff in Ripples in the Sand. I obviously explained the gruesome detail to which Lebrin's arm got crushed, when you sort of like fell into the current dungeon or whatever. And I was thinking about House. The thing that really got the place where I stopped watching House was there was an episode where a guy's eyeball exploded. Like he diagnosed a thing, he gave him some drug, and then his eyeball fills with blood like a balloon and pops, and that image is so fucked up and visceral. And I think the plot of that episode actually is that he's in a dream and he cannot solve, like, there is nothing wrong, it's all surreal or whatever. Like, that's not a real medical condition that anybody has, but it was like at the time when I was watching it.
I was that is the biggest objection that Caroline is having to it, is like occasionally she has to look away. And I was like, I'll tell you when they're done doing the thing. Um,
That happens to me sometimes with the Pit, when I watched all of the Pit, which I quite liked. I thought the Pit was actually excellent. But boy, God, there are some moments in the Pit where I just there's a part where a kid, it's 4th of July, and he dropped a firework as it was going off, and it blew off these two fingers, and they don't shy away from it. They just like show that to you, and I was like, that whole time. So yeah.
I wonder, famously football player, oh, what was his name? JP. There was a football player on the Giants who did that, and like uh, like, and he was a defensive lineman, so like it didn't totally destroy his career, but he was like a force in his rookie season, and he just kind of like fell off a little bit about, after that. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of there's a lot of degloving stuff. There's a thing where a guy's wedding ring like slurped off his finger and they have to like ugh, ugh, you know,
why I wear a
spooky.
silicone ring uh, for most of the time.
Honestly, the worst one though is was an aggressive staph infection. So there's this thing where like the doctor, or because it's all in one 24-hour period in the Pit or whatever, the doctor, she comes in, she has a thing on her foot, he draws a line around it with a sharp, and she comes back like 2 or 3 hours later, and the the sort of rash, she thinks it's a rash, has spread, and he goes, that's not a rash, that's an infection, it's like a staph infection, right, that is going to like kill you. And the one that really got me was they do this thing where they're arguing with the surgeon. The surgeon doesn't think it's a staph infection. And he goes, "Are you going to tell me this isn't?" And they cut into her leg, and and he like shows the necrotic flesh that is on the inside of her leg, because on the outside where the red is, like, it's not necrotic yet, but inside it's already started to like whatever. And he's like, "You're gonna tell me that's not a staph infection?" And he goes, "Okay, we gotta prep for surgery." And then later in that episode, the guy goes up to surgery and he goes, "Hey, how's she recovering?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I'm glad you saved her." And he goes, "Yeah, but I didn't save the leg." And just something about that has really stuck with me too. So I don't know, weird body stuff, I guess.
We all have our
Yeah.
excuses. Like I famously will not play Binding of Isaac because I don't like poop stuff. So, um,
True. Fair. The degloving injury in season one made me cover this case. Yeah, I get it. Fair enough. Huh.
yeah. All right. Is there anything else, or should we get out of here? We maybe made up for some lost ground, given that we've talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, oh my god. Yeah. Special bonus length, episode.
Well, with that, my headphones are dying. So with that, I'm going to say, if you what is it? If you'd like to email us about any things we talked about in this podcast, email us some derpswilliams@gmail.com or podcast@derpswilliams.com. You can rate and review us wherever you find podcasts. All links will be down in the description. But do you have anything you're looking to promote?
Mentabi release date, did I announce? Yeah, Mentabi release date 2 weeks. That's it. Mentabi's coming out in a bit.
Awesome. Uh, and with that, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.